All right, we're going to get started here in a second. It's 9 o'clock, and at the Solid Waste Authority, we like to start on time. On time.
My knee is going to give out on me.
In the meantime, if you are intending to have comments, we have at each of the podiums, you need to fill out a comment card. You should have received a comment card up front, okay? So let's start getting everybody to their seats, please.
Thank you. Oh, a ginger mint.
They're my favorite.
Sam.
I'm going to have to say yes, just to try it. I wouldn't go too much into it.
I'm doing it. All right, if you could, please make sure you silence your phones or put them on vibrate so that we don't hear what your favorite song is when the phone rings. Good morning. Oh, come on, it's not a library. Good morning, come on. Good morning. Garbage is sexy, let's go, right? Good morning. On behalf of the Solid Waste Authority, I welcome you here. As we begin, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. My name is Mike Ryan. I'm the mayor of the city of Sunrise, and I'm also fortunate enough to be the chair of the governing board and the executive committee for the Solid Waste Authority. I welcome you here this morning along with my co-chair, Beam Furr, from the County Commission. Let's give him a round of applause in the county for their work. I want to take a moment to thank the members of the governing board and the executive committee who have literally dedicated hundreds of hours collectively and individually through this process that we'll outline here today. So if you could give them a round of applause as well. And to the Broward League of Cities, who has been there from the beginning through the iterations of different acronyms for what got us here. They have been organizing and keeping us on track and making sure we have the information. Let's give the league leaders, Mary Lou's here, let's give her a big round of applause. Before we begin the presentation and our discussion, let me start with this. We face a crisis. Not just of what to do with the 5 million tons of waste that we generate in Broward County alone each year, or that we fail to recycle in a meaningful way, or that we rely far too heavily on landfilling, which increases environmental damage and falls short of our mandate, our paramount mandate, to recycle and divert from the landfills. Now, we face a more serious and threatening crisis. It's an economic crisis. We, as cities and the county, have ceded our economic strength to industry, monopolistic market forces, and the vagaries of the markets year after year. We lost the opportunity to control our destiny through ownership of the trash infrastructure, and thereby lost our ability to define or control our own destiny across this county. Some of these crisis points were generated when decisions were made 50 years ago. Some were the byproduct of a breakdown of a system that had the potential to blunt these crisis points and the impacts. But market forces have eclipsed our collective strength and drove us apart. We are now at a crossroad that is even more daunting than what we faced 50 years ago, with far less tools, more uncertainty, more risk, and more potential to fail yet again. There will be choices for the policymakers, for you, for me, individually and collectively. But in summary, we must change behavior to create volume reduction so as to divert from landfilling in every way possible. And, equally important, we must galvanize our commitment to economic strength in the numbers and vision and tonnage that we have in our cities. How do we get there? We must begin on focusing on volume source reduction in what we generate. We must do a better job of separating and processing waste commodity streams. And we must always be focused on the mission to divert what we generate from landfilling through every potential proven and viable strategy so as to reduce to the smallest residual possible that which may need to be burned or put in a landfill. And if we do not exercise our flow management, our strength, if we do not do that together, we will absolutely cede our future to monopolistic and usual market forces who are watching this crisis, and we will have few options to pivot. We know it could have been different by just looking north 15 miles, and I'll discuss that in a moment. Today we'll discuss the draft master plan, the product of accumulated analysis in 11 separate task-specific white papers comprising thousands of pages of information and analysis and data. Nearly 18 months of work by the executive committee, including 2 to 4 hour meetings every month, sometimes multiple. There have been public meetings bringing industry and the public together, workshops to bring the industry and community leaders together to join our efforts and to hear their ideas as we move forward. And along the way, the governing board and city staff have received all of the task reports and have had the opportunity to provide comments and to attend frequent public meetings, and that effort continues. Before we go through the draft master plan presentation, let me offer some points to consider about how we got here and what our challenges are. You know, some have said, why don't you just look at what Palm Beach County has done? Go to the shelf and take off the plan, open it up, and start. That's a great idea. Here's the problem. They have a 50-year head start on us. They own their waste processing and disposal assets. And let me give you the history. In about 1975, Palm Beach County and Broward County were in the same position, thinking about trash. They took different approaches. As a result, here in Broward County, we are in a far different position. The Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County is a dependent special district that Palm Beach County sought in 1975 to have the legislature approve. Palm Beach County Solid Waste Authority gets most of their budget from non-ad valorem assessment on the property tax bills. In 2017, 8 years ago, when we got divided and went our separate ways, let me outline what Palm Beach County had then. And I'll emphasize, they own these assets. They have 7 home chemical and recycling centers that safely recycle and dispose more than 4.2 million pounds of home chemicals. They own 6 transfer stations that handle 75% of the county's waste. They have 2 waste-to-energy facilities that combust 1.8 million tons of post-recycled municipal solid waste per year that they own. They have a recovered materials processing facility that processes approximately 100,000 tons of blue and yellow bin recycles each year. A biosolids processing facility that turns 130,000 tons of excrement from Palm Beach County residents and visitors into fertilizer. And a landfill that is their absolute last resort. In 2023, Palm Beach County was able to report a recycling rate of 80%. We are below 40. Palm Beach County Solid Waste serves 39 municipalities with a population of 1.4 million. It has 300 public recycling drop-offs, roughly 385 employees, and operates 65 tractor trailers to haul garbage from the 6 transfer stations strategically located throughout the county to one of the 2 waste-to-energy facilities and recyclable plants. These high-capacity transfer stations reduce traffic and reduce the carbon footprint by collectively transporting. Those tractor trailers that they own travel almost 4 million miles a year. And the contracts for collection of garbage and recycling and bulk waste, et cetera, is still the individual municipality's responsibility. Even after 50 years, they spend $4 million in education in a mature system to make sure the residents, the businesses, and the visitors understand the paramount importance of what has to be done with trash. Let me contrast Broward County. Instead of an independent special district, Broward at that time, in 1975 and the late 70s, decided not to pursue a dependent special district. He said, let's do this by contract between the cities and the county, and the contract will expire in 2013. That was the plan. They created the Resource Recovery Board. And instead of owning the 2 WTE facilities, or waste-to-energy facilities, in Broward would ask the residents and the businesses to pay for the brick and mortar of both, and when the bonds, or essentially the mortgage, was paid off, the keys to those plants would be handed over to a private company. We paid for 2 waste-to-energy plants, just like Palm Beach County, but unlike Palm Beach County, we agreed to give them away. And at the end, in 2013, the Resource Recovery Board had limited assets. Didn't own the waste energy, don't own the landfill, don't have transfer stations that we own. At the expiration of the agreement, the ILA, between the cities and the county as it was coming in 2013, there were many members of the Resource Recovery Board that wanted to extend. They understood the importance. But because of the high pricing offered by the market between waste energy, landfilling, and recycling, the cities were forced to consider alternatives. We fractured. We went in different directions, with each of us fighting for the lowest short-term price we could get. Then, one of the waste-to-energy plants was allowed to be dismantled with claims of undercapacity. And you'll see from this master plan that we probably had the capacity then, and we certainly need it now. And recently, the site where the WTE plant was sited, the one that was approved and zoned for electrical generation, was allowed to be rezoned to expand the landfill. So when you compare to Palm Beach County and you say, why not just do what they did, that would have been great. But they have 50 years head start on us, and the decisions that were made back then make that impossible today. As a result, in Broward County, we can say we inherited a crisis, or we can say we helped design that crisis. Or today we'll make a decision about whether we'll continue that crisis. But newsflash, Broward's built out. We don't have land available as we did in 1975, or what Palm Beach County had in 1975. And when we became fragmented, we had little to show for the past 50 years of the Resource Recovery Board and the decisions on trash. And every metric was heading in the wrong direction. Today, as I said, we generate 5 million tons of trash each year. We cannot burn our way out of it, and we cannot landfill our way out of this. So we are left to dispose through limited WT capacity, leaves us with transporting to landfills somewhere around the state. But just because we're facing this problem, I don't want you to take my comments as hand-wringing about what was decided years ago. I offer it because it's instructive of where we are now. The reason to look back is to understand why we are here today, what we face, and the hope that we do not repeat those same mistakes. Our mission at this point in history must be to divert as much from the landfill waste stream and galvanize ourselves to harness the economic power that we as cities in the county hold through the commodities known as trash, to demand the best pricing from the market, to achieve economies of scale, and to make sure we're getting the best pricing. At the same time, we have to keep an eye towards the opportunities that may exist for us to begin owning some of that infrastructure. You see, when we exercise our flow control management economic strength with an eye towards building infrastructure, we have the option to take away monopolistic powers, to give the next generation of residents and businesses and policymakers the best opportunity to achieve not only the paramount public policy that we know we have to achieve, but to achieve the economic stewardship to which they are entitled in the future and which was taken away from us 50 years ago. Some will say, this master plan's fine, but I think I can get it cheaper if I go off on my own, if we fracture. And that may be true. If you ignore the paramount policy of diverting from landfills, and you allow yourself to later become subject and exposed to the market powers you will not control. Short-term benefits maybe, long-term definitely not. Because make no mistake, the markets are watching the decisions we're making now. Second, there are recommendations throughout this master plan from the consultant, and some of these are aspirational. But they're there for us to consider and to choose, with some recommendations clearly destined for future decisions. I'll just give you one example. MSW collection, which is the responsibility of the cities, if we were able to divert construction and demolition debris, bulk and veg and compost organics, and maximize recycling, we may be in a position in the cities in some day to reduce the number of MSW collections we have and reduce our carbon footprint. Not in the near future, and maybe not even in my lifetime. But that would be the byproduct of maximum effort. Third, our effort and our work together to get to this point since 2017 represents a historic shift in vision. You see throughout this a zero waste lens. That has been a galvanizing principle, an aspiration though. It's been developed with broad consensus. It's not likely to be achieved to actually get to zero waste where nothing's burned and nothing's landfilled, but it is a lighthouse for us to watch. We know we must be focused on changing behavior in the supply chains, for the things we buy, for what's put on our shelves and how the product materials are put together, to our shopping baskets, and how we even take our goods home, and our homes and our businesses, how we deal with organics, recycling, reuse, repurpose, and diversion. You know, composting is no longer a fringe concept. Schools and businesses and cities have begun that. We have to be transparent and open to have the discussions when we fall short. For instance, and you will hear about it in this presentation, when it comes to construction and demolition debris, bulk and veg, we have failed. I wrote a piece a year ago about this being the low-hanging fruit, and the cities and the county need to act now, and the Solid Waste Authority has already formed a committee to start that process, even before the master plan is done. Because we know we can reduce significantly the landfilling of those materials if we act. And the infrastructure is available, and our ability to control that flow exists. Fourth, what we can do now, we must do now, and not wait. The Executive Committee and the Governing Board has repeatedly committed to that concept. So as we move forward, let's offer some ideas that we know we can start on. Let's commit immediately to a full education program for the entire community. Cross-culture, across economics and across all ages, industry and residential alike. In this moment, education is not about what we may do in the master plan or what we're thinking about doing, but what can be done right now. Single-use plastic reduction, harmonizing our recycling messages for consistency so that we reduce our contamination rates. When contamination rates go up, it costs us more. And we live and work and play in different places. I know everyone comes to Sunrise for fun, but there are some other places out there. We have to address organic management now. We have existing partners. There are opportunities for composting, and we can start before the master plan is even done. And as I said, construction, demolition, and veg has to be addressed now. As you will see, and there are graphs and all sorts of images for you, this is highly recyclable, highly divertible, and there are proven local strategies to replicate. With a real commitment to flow control, we can reduce the landfilling. The county started on that effort. They're taking steps at their own facilities, and the cities need to galvanize now to begin that process. And at the same time, because we recognize this is a politically charged conversation at times, we also have to try to agree on what we cannot do or what may not be possible. For instance, it is not possible to site another MSW landfill in Broward. There's no land. And we cannot, we should not, and we must not expand Monarch Hill. There is no recommendation in this document to do so, but we do need landfilling capacity. I'm grateful that the county and the waste management have reached an agreement to halt MSW at Monarch Hill, and we need to stop that as soon as possible. We need to be clear so that those who say otherwise, who say we intend to expand Monarch Hill and that's part of this plan, that is not part of our collective plan. It is not something we should do. And it appears, right, that there does not exist a political appetite to site another waste-to-energy facility where one does not already exist or did not exist. As I've said, we've been actively prevented from siting another WTE facility at the site that hosted the former plant since it was rezoned. The county agreed to do that over the opposition of the executive committee. But waste to energy remains a strategy, and we cannot ignore that. Is there political, economic, social, or public energy and appetite for a new site in Broward? That's a discussion. We certainly can expand the existing WTE facility to modestly increase capacity. And should we consider buying back the very site that we built upon once before and handed over that was dismantled? It has the opportunity to be the only site that is zoned for waste to energy. Maybe that is a consideration, even though it touches the gag reflex, the idea of building yet another plant that we paid for once before. At the same time, we need to spotlight industry leaders in Broward. We need to spotlight to ourselves and to the public, those who've already initiated significant steps and that which we want to replicate. The executive committee's heard from industry. You can choose what you want to do now and how to bring into your organization existing strategies. And what they've proven is you can recycle, you can divert, and make a profit and reduce costs. It makes economic sense. We've heard it from schools, North Broward Prep in Coconut Creek, the middle school, diverting all of their organics, recycling. Not only did they reduce their costs, they're making money. They're hauling less. The Florida Panthers, come on, we gotta go. Go Cats, come on, let's make some noise for the Panthers. That is weak. What are all these Edmonton fans here? What happened? Florida Panthers realized years ago that they control their environment, everything that comes in and everything that goes out. They made decisions with their suppliers. They made source decisions. They made decisions about how to recycle, how to source separate. They have proven it makes economic sense. They are diverting and they are making money off it. City Furniture, we all know, has been a leader. Same idea. Not just in their own operations, but they make it a message of what they do as a corporate culture. Everything they touch is subject to diverting, recycling, and they prove you can reduce costs and make money at it. The cruise industry is leading this way because everything that goes on a boat has got to be managed. They even are testing out land-based, on the ship, land-based strategies for burning that which can be. We must partner and wrap our arms around the industry players and leaders to help us replicate strategies, but to also join the education mission. When the Florida Panthers tell you it's important to recycle, it's a religious statement to the fans. And we have to do this in our homes and our businesses. We have to look forward to emerging technologies and investing in that which is proven, not that which is speculative. And we know technology will evolve. This master plan is meant to be for the next 45 years, and technology will change. You know, it's been said that in 30 years, how we are trying to solve our problems today will make us look like a bunch of monkeys with sticks in the sand trying to build a skyscraper. We have to be forward-looking with due deliberation and care, not reaching for the sensational claims of the possible or some stray article or posting that says this is what they're doing, but that which is provable, because unlike industry, we have finite resources. We must recognize as cities that we are destined to commit our shared economic power and strength if we are to succeed, and if we do not, we are destined for failure. These streams of garbage are commodities. Flow commitment and management is our primary strength. As I said, not only to achieve this paramount social and public policy of diversion and reuse, but in defining our own future economic future, our destiny, and what we hand off to the next generation. We must exert our power as cities in the county while working with available public and private infrastructure and being prepared to initiate our own facilities so we protect against market vagaries, monopolistic efforts, and as I said, the market is watching. We must commit to never make the same mistakes or similar mistakes that were made 50 years ago. We cannot fail to seize opportunities. We should never cede our economic power. And we have to reject the efforts of market players to divide us, baiting us with short-term savings of a few dollars. We saw what happened when we abandoned our common purpose and our forward-thinking vision. We can never abandon good stewardship again. And we must look to proven legislative and community strategies. That's weak. You got a better song than that? Come on. The elephant in the room, what's going to cost us? That's what I want to know. I'm an elected official. What's it going to cost my residents? It depends. You know, Palm Beach County has capacity for 1.8 million tons at their waste-to-energy plant. We dedicate about 550,000 tons. We can add capacity. We could build a new facility. We have to have land. We have to have time and money. Yeah, sure. Let's just, you know, diverting from the landfill will cost so much more, some say, than just dumping. We can just put it on rails and send it anywhere, send it upstate. If that's what we decide to do, if we decide we're going to landfill everything, aside from the environmental disaster that poses, get ready for someday the transport and disposal costs to be hiked up on us when they know we have no way to pivot and we have no options. I'm telling you, they are watching. When we have no plan and we cede our leadership responsibilities to market forces for short-term gain, the market forces will come hunting. And our legacy will only be matched by the decisions that were made 50 years ago. I thank the county. I thank Beam Fur. We sat down over coffee with Mayor Sturmer when we had all gone our separate ways, and we knew this was a disaster. We didn't know that morning whether it would be possible to keep everyone together, and there have been points along this way where it was difficult, maybe even uncertain, that we would stick together to even get to this point. And even when we've had sharp disagreements and sharp elbows in my discussions and our discussions, even as you hear my comments about how I feel about Monarch Hill and what's happened there, I know we must transcend the politics of the personal and of the moment. We have to set aside the moments in the past where distrust caused fracture while being mindful of the mistakes that we all made and those before us made. I thank the county because it has dedicated time and effort and money to this process and has remained committed all the way to at least going through this process, to providing the information we need and the dialogue. And they are already taking steps that we know we need to tap into as well. We must exert our potential untapped energy and power for our shared purpose and our shared future if we are to achieve anything great. If we are to address the crisis entirely, the making of people not in this room or the dioceses that are here, and if we can even try to make up for the past 50 years of misdirection and do something that the future generations can be proud of. As I turn it over to my co-chair for his opening comments, there are no doubt many other philosophical and practical ideas to consider, but in the short term, let's stay focused. Diversion from landfilling through all available and viable strategies to reduce such that the residual for landfilling is at an absolute minimum. And exert our joint and superior economic power by being galvanized together in common purpose, mission, and vision. We must act decisively, deliberately, and with as much haste as is possible from government to construct a plan for the next 50 years. What will be presented today is a roadmap. It's a living, breathing document and plan. And there are many big picture issues that we must first agree on. To be sure, we can dissect each of the individual issues, and we can certainly induce something that government is great at doing, and that's analysis paralysis. But we have to start today. We have to do what we can now, and we have to avoid the mistakes of 50 years ago and more recently. At this time, I'd like to introduce our co-chair, Beam Fur.
Well, good morning, everybody. How'd you all get so lucky to be at this garbage duty here today? How many elected officials do we have in here? Just so I can see. Okay. Because that is the audience for today. First, I want to thank Mike. Like he mentioned, we had a cup of coffee, I think it was 2015. And we knew we were seeing what had happened after the implosion of the RRB and what it was happening to the cities. And we were seeing rates hike really high, and something needed to be done. And I want to compliment Mike, and Greg Ross is here, and a number of, I can't think of who else, Jamie, I think you were there, that said, you know what, let's try to pull everybody back together, put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And it was necessary, but that's been 10 years, and your passion is unmatched. And I think we probably agree on about 95% of stuff. There's a little bit of a historical narrative there. I might change a little bit, but I was a Hollywood City Commissioner for a long time, for 12 years. And when I was a Hollywood City Commissioner, as a commissioner, I was only concerned with garbage when it didn't get picked up. That was it. Somebody would call, they missed my garbage. And I would call Greg Turek, who was one of the guys on the RRB, but he was our director of waste. I said, Greg, hey, here's the address. Let's go get it. At that time, we actually had our own garbage that were part of our own utilities. And that was the extent of what I had to worry about. Get it picked up. I had no idea where it went. None. And I didn't care. I honestly didn't really care. As long as it got picked up, it's out of my hair. Fast forward a couple years after that. Then I became a county commissioner. Now I never get a call as to whether garbage is getting picked up. Never. But everybody wants to know where it's going and what's happening to it and what we're gonna do. It is a whole different perspective. And for the elected officials here today, most important for you to do today is be willing to take off one hat and put on another, because you're going to be asked as part of the Solid Waste Authority to do both. You're going to have to be concerned with not only it getting picked up, but where it goes and how it's disposed of. For me, I think I'm the only person here that was on the RRB. I could be wrong, but I think I am. I was on the Resource Recovery Board as a Hollywood City Commissioner, and I got to see the Resource Recovery Board in action. This is maybe where we differ a little bit on this, Mike, because when I was on that, we were the envy. This county was the envy of counties all over the United States, because we had a system that was progressive, that was able to do all kind of things, all kinds of money that would go to education. We had Broward Beautiful that you could take, every city could do grants, do landscaping. You were seeing research and development. You were seeing all of the garbage was contained in this county, all of it. Wasn't being shipped off to St. Cloud. It wasn't going to Okeechobee. Wasn't going any other place. It was all being dealt with right here. Now I'm on the SWA, and you know, when I left as a city commissioner in 2012. That's when I left the RRB. I got elected in 2014. All hell broke loose in those 2 years between there, because that's when the RRB imploded. I wish I'd had those 2 years to be a part of that, of trying to keep it together, because it was actually a good system. Was it costing a lot? Yeah, but a lot of people didn't understand. When those bonds were being paid, there was an escalator from 1993, I think, to 2013, and it did get high. The tipping fee got really high. It got over $100 a ton. But when they got paid off, we all should have been popping a cork and drinking champagne. Instead, we got some, and I'm not going to say who, where, whatever, but for all kind of reasons, we blew apart. Some people thought they could do it better. They thought they could do it cheaper. They thought they could recycle more. And some people got greedy, and a lot of companies wanted to make a profit. And it has caused us heartache and a big problem until now. So now we're trying to put this back together again. And today I'm going to be brief with my remarks, because there's going to be more questions than after this, and I'm happy to go there with that. But as on the county role, I'm also the chair of the Climate Change Task Force, and with that, part of the resilience plan of the helping create the resilience plan for this county. And I will tell you, one of the things I went to COP. That's the Conference of Parties that deals with climate change in Dubai 2 years ago. There was the main thing that they were dealing with was there was two things. One was, how will the bigger countries help those poorer countries that were literally getting flooding and having to move into another land because of climate change, because of sea level rise. I say that because when you look at the amount that we're landfilling and the amount that's being landfilled throughout the world, at COP, the third leading generator of greenhouse gases is landfills. The third leading generator. We are, in some ways, not that far apart from those small little places that were getting overrun or that were getting flooded. We are ground zero for sea level rise. And we can't be the ones who are doing the landfilling and causing our own demise. We can't be doing that. We have to be showing the people, not only the people that we represent, but the people throughout this country, that there's other ways to do this. And last month, when the county voted to take all the organics out of the landfill, that is a model for landfills all over the United States. We are going to be trying to deal with those in a different way. And I want to thank our friends that are thinking of doing zero waste and all that, because those ideas or what prompted that. They prompted other ways to reduce our waste, to reuse our waste. And the county is intent on doing that. You're already seeing the school board looking at how they can use their food from the cafeteria and start to compost. We had a private school came and show how it's being done now. And the school board right now is thinking about it. We are asking the port, the airport, the hospitals, everybody start thinking about this. Start thinking about how you can reduce that. And, you know, when we are in essence kind of a conference of parties here. We are, between the city and the county, that conference of parties that has to figure this out together. Today you're going to see a rough draft. And I say rough draft because even at our last executive committee meeting, there was a lot of consternation about this, that there were things that were being omitted or things that needed to be added. So we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And to Mike's point, how much does it cost? We're not there yet on that either. But we are responsible to those people that we represent, but we're also responsible to the future. And I want us to be thinking of that. This is a 40-year plan, and we have to be thinking not only of who we represent now, but to those people that are going to be here after we're gone. And we need to be doing something that is right, not only by the people, but by this planet. And so I hope that those kind of things are in our mind. I know it's very tempting to think of short-term costs, but we need to be thinking long-term on this on a variety of issues. So I'm going to end my remarks here because I want to have a lot of time to take questions at the end. But I want to thank you all for being here. You are that conference of parties that can make a huge difference. And for all those elected officials, take off that other hat today. Take a good listen and ask yourself, how can I now think of big picture and think of how you can be a part of that. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to start with public comment, 3 minutes per person, one at a time, and you cannot be allocated to others. I will say, as folks get lined up, whatever we were when the RB was there, envy or otherwise, we are not now on any metric. And that's our job today, and I agree with being on that. And when the bonds were paid off, the reason we didn't pop corks is because cities said, all right, we paid for these buildings. How much lower is a tipping fee going to be? And why is it still costing so much? Why is it still so expensive? And there was distrust and doubt. And that's when it drove, for maybe $10 a ton, drove us apart because we didn't control the plants. We had a billion reasons to stay together, but we didn't own it. All right, public comments at either of the, anyone signed up? Going once, going twice. You want to wait for questions or you want to do it? And for the elected officials, once we're done the presentation, we'll immediately move to you all for questions and comments after the presentation. All right, first speaker, please give us your name and your city.
Newell Hollingsworth, Southwest Ranches. Some years ago, Beam Fur came to our town of Southwest Ranches and was talking about what was going to happen, and this is the result of that. But he mentioned at that time, which was very scary to us, and it's still scary to Southwest Ranches residents, that it would take 4 incinerators with 4 burners each to handle all of the trash and garbage of Broward County, and they would be in the 4 corners of the county. That scared me to death at that time because all I saw was these plumes of smoke coming out, and every morning I would see the FPL plant still burning its dirty oil before it went to its clean oil in the morning, and you'd see the smoke rising from the stacks in Port Everglades. I started working at that point to not have incinerators. And at the maximum, the one incinerator that still exists in this county. At the time, it was 2 incinerators. Southwest Ranches at that time was at 70% recycling because of the waste hauler that we had. That waste hauler was bought out by another company, and we went down in the amount of recycling. We now have a new plant, recycling plant, that's in southwest Broward County. And it will be coming online, and it's somewhat online right now, but will be coming online with artificial intelligence and all that sort of good stuff. And I hope all of you will go out and take a look at it. It's by Waste Management. And they have recycle monstrous amounts of plastic, paper, glass, and metal. We also have started a program within Southwest Ranches to do all of the organics, and the town is paying for it. We're going to see how that works out. But education is a major part of this endeavor. We have people that only want to do single stream. Convincing them is the hard part. We have a committee in Southwest Ranches, a town committee, that is working on zero waste. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Thank you. Representative Barterman.
Thank you. As you go through this presentation, I really want to understand why when in 2012 the state of Florida passed a law that we had to meet a 75% recycling goal by 2020. And only 3 counties in the state actually met it: Charlotte, Lee, and Pinellas. So I want to know what caused the failure of Broward County to meet the recycling goal. They gave us tools, yet we were unable to meet that. Now, these are 3 larger counties that were able to meet it successfully at 75%. And because we did not meet it, we have now passed another bill that's going to once again tell you as the county to meet this recycling goal. So you're gonna present a plan here today, and my concern is, where did the plan fall short? Why were other counties able to meet that goal of recycling, which you talk about 50 years out? They did it. They took care of it. Gainesville has a zero waste initiative right now. What failures occurred in the county that we couldn't be a shining example of how to meet a recycling goal? And then how are we going to trust this if we couldn't meet the last one? And those are the things that I'm gonna need to hear from you today, because clearly it can be done. We have just failed to do so. Thank you.
Very, very straightforward. I'll answer that question right now because I want to clear this up. As was said, when the RRB failed and separated, we were on course to hit 75%. When we went separate directions and tried to do this ourselves, some cities said, I'm not going to pay for recycling because I don't want to spend the money. Some decided to just landfill. The market drove us apart. It's all well and good for Tallahassee to say that, but they still cannot pass a ban on single-use plastics. They know this is bad. So for Tallahassee to tell us again, great. That's not what the issue is. We don't need to know what we need to achieve. We need to be together to do it ourselves. So thank you for that question.
Good morning. My name is Richard Ramcharatar, Southwest Ranches. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Solid Waste Authority. I'm here today to raise urgent concerns about the environmental and public health risk posed by the proposed trash incinerators, particularly their emissions of PFAS and heavy metals into our air, water, and soil. You've all seen headlines about 3M they settled for $12.5 billion with public water suppliers to address PFAS contamination in drinking water. They also settled with the state of New Jersey for $450 million. Why? Because PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, don't break down. They accumulate in our bodies, and they're linked to cancer, thyroid disease, immune suppression, and developmental damage in children. If 3M was held liable for releasing these chemicals, then Broward County could also be liable if you approve incinerators that burn PFAS-laden plastics and materials without proper containment or destruction technologies. The EPA has already warned that burning PFAS is not reliably safe, and incinerators that do so may only convert them into toxic byproducts. These incinerators don't just pose a risk to public health, they put our wetlands, drinking water resources, and communities, including the Miccosukee tribe and Everglades farmers, directly in harm's way. The pollution won't stop at the smokestack. Instead of exposing Broward County residents to future lawsuits, toxic air, and higher healthcare costs, I urge this body to invest in true zero-waste solutions, not short-sighted, high-risk incineration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Lansky,
Just as we go through this, because there will be comments on both sides, clapping's fun. I don't want to hear boos, though. All right? So let's try to be respectful to everyone. So thank you.
Jim Lasky, Southwest Ranches, Florida. Thank you very much for that opening comment you did, Mr. Ryan, or Mayor Ryan.
Mike is fine.
Mike? Okay. All right. Got it. All right. What we failed to do is we talked about all the technology and all the players that are in this room that know the right way to go with whether it's robotic processing, whether it's landfill, the dangers, the fact that the Coconut Creek landfill is in a hurricane evacuation zone. But, you know, there's things like wind field analysis that's never been considered on that landfill. And when you think of the amount of evidence there is on microplastics going all the way to your brain and into your infecting your genealogy going forward and your development of your fetus and that sort of thing, you know, you guys really ought to check that out. You know, if they can do it for Australia, they can sure do it for, you know, South Florida. The second thing I want to bring up is, my notes here, is that the technology that now exists, it's being installed by Waste Management that started in 2011 with the company. Well, that's a big company. They should have the responsibility to share whatever progress they've made with this board. That's what I would call a fiduciary responsibility. It's also probably, as I brought up the last time, an SEC violation. I'm a stockholder. That's what I do for a living. All right? I never knew that. I had no idea that technology was going forward. You always want to see where a company's going, how they're spending their capital, all right? How much capital they're allocating towards solving the problem. The addressable market is obviously huge, okay? Therefore, it should be incumbent on the company to be honest and open and transparent. By the way, they're a trustee of the Broward League of Cities, as I recall, along with the incinerator people and, of course, our own Florida Power and Light. Anyway, that's all I got to say, but we got to start doing some stuff right away and take advantage of what we already know is proven. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Mary Stevens. I'm a resident of Pembroke Pines. I appreciate all that the Solid Waste Authority has been doing. I haven't been avidly up with the meetings and exactly everything that's going on. I do feel very adamantly that we should not have any more incinerators. I have talked to people that lived in the Doral area before the fire, after the fire, and it was just horrible. One lady I spoke to, she works in Pembroke Pines, and she didn't want her name given, but she moved there not knowing how horrible the atmosphere was going to be. And she said, it almost makes me cry, she had 2 children, husband, And she lived several miles from the incinerator, not right next to it, several miles. She said within 5 miles, that she could smell it most all the time, depending on the way the wind blowed. And she said that when she drove home after work, she would actually sit in her car and they would open the windows just to see how the smell was. And if the smell was bad, they would roll the windows back up and run into their house.
The millions at home
That's the
can't.
way
The
they
millions at home won't be able to hear you if you step away from the mic.
Okay, well, that's the way they lived. That's the way they lived. And it was horrible. And I drove up to the, by myself, not a visit that was scheduled, because I thought if I went to the Palm Beach incinerator area that, you know, they might make it look real nice and not smell. And I drove up by myself, and I opened my windows at the Iron Wood, or whatever that development's called, and it stunk to high heaven. I was surprised. I didn't think it was going to smell. That's what they said. But it smelled really, really bad. It smelled so bad that I wanted to just roll my windows back up and head on home to Pembroke Pines as fast as I could to get away from the stink. I couldn't believe it. But I decided I drove all the way up here, so I'm going to go ahead and keep driving down. And when I did, it was the most outrageous, horrible smell I have ever smelled. So I really decided definitely not the way to go. I then went down a little bit further and went out into the neighborhoods nearby. And I spoke to the people that lived in the area there, and they also said it was horrible. So I tried to figure out, not to mention the fact that all of the things in the air are very a lot of the pollutants are all very toxic, many of which I don't even think we know how to measure how toxic they are. But they said that they could smell it regularly, and I tried to figure out how could they smell it, how could they live with that. And there's one last thing I want to say. The reason is I learned there's something called olfactory fatigue. And that's the thing that if you walk into a house and it smells like fish, and then a few minutes later you don't smell it anymore, you don't smell it anymore because your body acclimates to it. It's called olfactory fatigue, and that's why people think it doesn't stink when it really does.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. My name is Linda Thompson-Gonzalez. I live in Lauderdale by the Sea. I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters. And first of all, I want to thank everyone in this Solid Waste Authority Executive Committee, all of you, for overcoming the problems and the divisions of the past and coming together and presenting this amazing plan today. It's not easy to overcome the problems of the past and unite for what we're about to succeed in doing. So it's important to recognize that. I also want to say I've actually read the plan and the many appendices online, and so the solutions are there, and I thank you for that. Having read all of that, I want to just reiterate what you, Mayor Ryan, and others at the last meeting have reiterated is the low-hanging fruit so that we can move forward with what the plan offers, and that is an ordinance for the C&D construction, for an ordinance to divert that from our landfills. The other thing that you have proposed, of course, is the composting. We've visited the schools to see what's happening there. There are many successes for that, examples around the state and the country that we can build on. The third thing, of course, is the glass recycling. As we know, taxpayers are paying 3 times for extracting the sand from the ocean, 6 million tons a year. That extraction is smothering and covering up the coral reefs and causing the beach erosion that we are also paying to fix. And thirdly, we're paying to have that glass shipped to another part of the state. It's the heaviest, one of the heaviest commodities, and taxpayers are paying a 3rd time to have that shipped. So I thank you again. You have all the tools. Let's get a C&D ordinance in place. Our composting is very exciting, and if we can add the glass recycling, that will help quickly reduce the burden, the 3 times payment that taxpayers are doing because we are not uniformly recycling glass. We have some examples of that. So thank you again for all you are doing. I'm excited that we move forward with the tools you have provided us. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Next speaker.
Debbie Green, Southwest Ranches. My comments are to all the elected officials in the room, those on the executive committee who have been actively working on in their hard work in creating the draft master plan, and then to all of the pretty much all the others of cities, towns in the county that are part of the governing board of the authority. That you will all be voting on the master plan. And I want to start off by let us all applaud Mayor Ryan's opening remarks. At the one and only public outreach meeting for county residents previously held by the master plan consultants, you heard definitively that the residents of Broward County do not want any new incineration. While I do understand there's this very small percentage of our solid waste that has no other safe way of being disposed of, the existing incinerator waste to energy WTE site should be sufficient. If you move forward with the recommended plan by the consultants using the other more sustainable processes to divert a substantial amount of solid waste from landfill and incineration waste to energy. I urge you to amend the language in section 15.2.1.6 that reads, Scenario A, which is the recommendation of the consultants, it assumes the existing permitted disposal capacity of the South Broward RRF will continue to be used. A new WTE facility is not contemplated at this time. Again, I urge you to remove the language, a new WTE facility is not contemplated at this time. Just leave it so no other incinerator site will be contemplated in the next 40 years, and Broward County can avoid the public outrage, potential legislation, and threatened lawsuits we've all seen in Miami-Dade County. As included in the draft master plan, let's separate yard debris from bulk pickups. By making this one simple change, we've already diverted a substantial amount of solid waste from the landfill and/or incineration WTE. Second, requiring all to recycle will divert another huge substantial amount from the landfill or incineration waste to energy WTE. One of the largest things required to implement the recommended scenario is education, education, education. Let's give the residents of Broward County more credit and believe that most are willing to make changes in behavior and habits to do the right thing for our environment and health. Let's leave our county, cities, and towns more sustainable, economically stronger, and healthier with a true circular economy of trash for our next generation than we found it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Alexandra Martinez from Southwest Ranches. The draft master plan outlines 5 scenarios, 2 of which, scenarios B and C, include waste to energy, WTE, trash incinerators. That is also on slide 24 of today's presentation. And on page 31 of the draft plan, slide 25, facility siting criteria for all technologies lists the setback for a WTE incinerator from residential zoning of just half a mile. That is an alarmingly close distance. On page 46, the plan states that WTE is not considered at this time, implying the potential inclusion later as it's suggested in scenarios B and C. Additionally, the white paper in Appendix B, which starts in about page 490, basically questions whether incinerators are harmful or not, rather than acknowledging the well-documented dangers. And this is unacceptable. We urge the complete removal of WTE incinerators from the plan. Why? Because incinerators pose significant risks to South Florida. They are a severe threat to air pollution and public health. WTE incinerators release toxic pollutants like dioxins and heavy metals, increasing respiratory illnesses and cancer risks. Our humid climate worsens their lingering effects in the air. It's a threat to the Everglades and the Biscayne Aquifer. Our drinking water relies highly on the porous Biscayne Aquifer, which is vulnerable to contamination. The toxic incinerator ash can leach into groundwater, despite the billions of dollars that are being spent to restore the Everglades. WTE incinerators emit massive amounts of CO2, accelerating climate change, not just the landfills. These facilities are very expensive to maintain and to build them. and taxpayer dollars should not fund environmental destruction. We need to double down on the better alternatives like zero waste strategies, enhanced recycling, composting, mulching without the harmful effects of incineration. Waste-to-energy incinerators are outdated, they're dangerous, and they're unnecessary. Please help us protect our environment, our water, our communities by striking WTE incinerators from all scenarios in the plan. Thank you.
Okay, last two speakers, and then we're going to get to the master plan.
Good morning. Harold Gubnitsky, Southwest Ranches. I chair the Zero Waste Advisory Board. First, commend mayors and the Solid Waste Authority on everything you've been doing. I'm trying to put together a 40-year goal and plan. I know it's not easy. A lot of things that you're trying to balance. But I think what we all can appreciate here is that between education, between really looking at some of the low-hanging fruit like composting the organics, by removing the green yard waste and using technologies like biochar and doing the recycling, we can make a huge dent. Just the green yard waste alone, if you remove that, that's about approximately 30% of what's going into landfills today. So that could give us a long headway just by that alone. I would challenge everyone in this room here to remove the incinerator language completely. That be the mark that you guys leave for the next 40 years, and force us to look at continuous innovation. There's no way we know 40 years into the future what are the new technologies. There's technologies that are happening all around the country, all around the world for recycling, for going upstream and making sure that products coming into the county are safe and environmentally safe. So let's kind of put ourselves in a position to force us to do everything other than incineration. The technologies are here. We have some low-hanging fruit. We can make some things happen now, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, last speaker, and then we're going to have the presentation of the plan. As soon as we'll wait for elected officials. As soon as we're done, we'll have the elected officials be first up. Thank you.
Good morning, Mike. Beam, appreciate the opportunity. My name is Bob Healy with Wind Waste Innovations. We own and operate the waste energy facility located at 441 and 595. And I just, two comments just real quick, is that there is a huge difference between incineration and waste energy. I need to remind everybody, what used to be incineration is what City of Fort Lauderdale was located at the Wingate Road location 40, 50 years ago. Waste energy is what we operate at our facility, truly state-of-the-art, up to standards as we go. My point being here is just strictly, if you've never taken a tour of the facility, I welcome any and all of you, elected or not, to please contact me, take a tour of the facility. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised in terms of what happens at our facility, how we process the waste. There is no odor in terms of coming onto our facility, and I just think you'd be pleasantly surprised. And I stand openly to welcome any and all of you to come take a tour of the facility.
Thank you. Okay, now we're ready for the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our consultants to introduce their team. And as soon as that is done, we'll start with the elected officials for your comments and questions. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Solid Waste Authority, the general public that have shown up to share your thoughts and have been engaged throughout this process. I want to welcome everybody to this draft master plan outreach workshop. It's the culmination of several years of work by the county and members of the Solid Waste Authority, and also for the work of the SCS team over the past year. That includes representatives from Arcadis, Resource Recycling Systems, and Mercury. We're presenting the highlights of the draft master plan. I particularly appreciate the person that mentioned that they have been following along, attended the first public outreach meeting that we have been paying attention to the documents that build up to what has come together as the draft master plan. All of that information is available on the Solid Waste Authority website, all of the white papers and analysis that has been done. The reason that we've been pushing that information out is that we made a commitment for this plan to be collaborative and inclusive. We value your input, and ultimately it is filtered through the governing board, through the executive committee, and through the executive director, but we're paying close attention to the sentiments, the feelings that people have, and the suggestions that you have provided so that we can build a consensus master plan. All of that will be synthesized before the draft master plan is finalized later this summer. So I just want to go through the agenda for today, the items that we're going to cover. Again, we're going to hit the highlights of the plan so that we maximize the time that we have together to hear further input from staff and from the electeds. So we're going to set the stage. We're going to discuss where we've been. You know, any matter of public policy can be viewed as an issue or as an opportunity. I'd like to think of it really in the latter sense. We recognize that there are great challenges that you face, but as the chair indicated, working together, we really do believe that you can seize this opportunity and make a difference. We want to talk about the activities, the analysis that we've done. It literally is thousands of pages of analysis that has informed our work, and ultimately the recommended path forward, and then the call to action, because as it has been said, this plan really is about changing behaviors. So there is a role for everybody to play, even before we get to the technologies that can manage the waste streams as resources. So let's start with introductions and setting the stage. So I'm joined today by one colleague, even though you'll see a few faces on the screen. Travis Barnes is a senior consultant with Resource Recycling Systems, and he'll be joining me in the presentation today. Leah Richter, unfortunately, had an emergency, and she's not able to join us today, but will be participating in future public workshops. So let's start with really the bottom line. Right, so we tried to summarize it in this slide, and really, as was shared by the chair, how do we transform from a fragmented system to a unified authority, right? So the structure is there, but how do we all participate in meaningful transformation? It's important that we're clear that the master plan is intended as a strategic document. There are tactical elements to it, but it really is a strategy that hopefully is the galvanizing, common purpose that we're looking for. And it was stated by one member of the public, but I also want to highlight that we've applied a zero waste lens. And what does that mean to us? Right? It's not that we're going to achieve or eliminate the need for a landfill. Right? We're not there yet. No community in the world is there yet. But it is a philosophical framework that we can change the paradigm from thinking about waste as something that needs to be combusted or disposed or recycled. We want to maximize the value of the waste stream. In doing so, we're minimizing the amount of waste that ultimately needs to be disposed. There is no way for that waste. We have to be clear-eyed that there will always need, at least for the foreseeable future, there will be a need for a landfill and landfill capacity, recognizing the constraints that we have here in the county. So as you can see, the last year that recycling data was reported to the state of Florida, so it's 2023, Broward County was at an adjusted recycling rate of 39%. That is a long way from the aspirational 75%. And as was stated, yes, there are some counties in Florida that are achieving it, some with waste energy, some without. But in each jurisdiction, the circumstances are somewhat different, the details are different, but the essence can be the same. And it can be ideas that y'all can embrace and fulfill. The most important thing that we are driving towards is behavior change. Right? Everybody can do something. Nobody has to do everything. But through a robust education and outreach program, we believe that behavior change is possible. We also believe that economies of scale make a big difference. And part of that is flow control. The chair referenced the economies of scale and how that buying power buys you influence and stability. We also know that harmonizing services is critically important. So as referenced earlier that at the end of the expiration of the Resource Recovery Board, all the municipalities went their own way. which meant different levels of service, different quality of service, and essentially different services in each community. It's important that we harmonize services across the county, so if you move from Fort Lauderdale to Plantation, you understand what the recycling program is, what the set-out requirements are, so there's consistency. And it also allows for consistency with visitors to Broward County. You're very fortunate to live in a desirable geography where tourism really is a foundational element of your economy. We're also focused on resource stewardship and environmental stewardship, and we believe that these factors will help drive financial stability. There are lots of ways to get to 75%. As I mentioned, we know that a robust education and outreach program is foundational. We want to minimize waste generation in the first place, and we'll talk about some facts and figures in a bit. We want to make sure that we're increasing access to recycling across all of your communities. For those that have read the master plan, but if you haven't, you'll learn today that we want to optimize organics management and initiate better management of construction and demolition debris. And we've presented strategies in great detail, and we'll be talking about them today. There are certain policies and regulations that can be enacted both at the county level and at the municipal level, and advocacy at the state level and even at the federal level. We have gone into great detail about innovative technologies, and we agree. We always have to be looking out over the horizon for what is coming that can be transformational. We also know that leveraging the existing infrastructure is a critical first step, and we have to be mindful of where that will fall short in the future so that planning can be made in a proper way rather than responding to a crisis. And again, we cannot get away from the need for long-term disposal capacity. It's an obligation that's set in Florida statutes for the county, but that is ultimately the driver for a lot of decisions. Where are you going to put your waste? We wanted this master plan to be action-oriented. We believe that the recommendations provide that framework, but again, this is an all-hands-on-deck. Not just the elected officials, everybody, whether you're visiting or you call Broward County home, there are actions that you can take to create a successful outcome. Okay, so where have we been? And Chair Ryan did a great job at walking us through the history. I just want to touch on some of the highlights. The Davie landfill closed in the 1970s. For those of you that were around at that time, there was also an oil embargo, and people were very concerned about energy. And that's when the conversation started about how do we balance electricity production and reliable solid waste management, and that led to the exploration of waste to energy as the core facilities or processes to manage your waste. In the mid-1980s, solicitations were issued, which was quickly followed by the establishment of the Solid Waste District through the interlocal agreement, which is one of many ways to bring communities together. In the early 90s, the two waste-energy facilities commenced operation, and as was shared earlier, when the bonds retired on those two facilities, a decision had to be made by the members of the Resource Recovery Board. In an effort to build consensus around that, what we referred to as the Trash Summit was convened, and it included elected officials from around the county and beyond that focused on a few simple questions. Are we better working together than competing against each other? Right, so those nearly 20 years of collaboration, will that continue? What is the value of economies of scale? Right, again, having that waste provides a lot of opportunity and leverage in the marketplace. And ultimately, the decision was made at that time to disband the Resource Recovery Board. A lot of work has gone on over the years, right? Part of it is in reaction to the lessons that were learned, right? I'm sure a lot of elected officials ask themselves, are we better off today going it alone than we were when we were working together? Which then led to the formation of the Solid Waste Authority that has been in existence for just 2 years now. We responded, the SES team responded to this challenge and the opportunity to develop the Solid Waste Master Plan. And again, we are awaiting and eagerly requesting your feedback on the plan. So this simply presents an overview of the structure of the Solid Waste Authority, where there is a governing board and an executive committee. All of this information is available in white papers and the resource documents on the Solid Waste Authority website. But it was by intention to include or to sort of break into 3 categories: large members, large cities, medium members, and small members, so that there was fair representation on the executive committee and on the governing board. So we interact regularly with both bodies at their monthly meetings, but our day-to-day interaction is with the executive director and the authority council, who are with us today. And it's important to note that not all cities within Broward County are currently part of the interlocal agreement. However, the opportunity to join is there. Okay, so as you can see, and hopefully you can see, there is ample existing infrastructure within Broward County. But you'll note that most of it is privately owned and operated. The county does own a landfill. It is technically, it's permitted as a Class 1 facility, but it operates as a Class 3 facility, meaning that municipal solid waste, the way that we generate it and put it at the curb every day, is not processed there, but yard trash and bulk waste is, and other materials. There is the one waste energy facility, privately owned and operated, that remains from the old system. There are many transfer stations. Reference was made earlier to the material recovery facility owned by Waste Management and operated by Waste Management. That is, there is a new facility that is rising next to it that is implementing a lot of the quote-unquote innovative technologies for better processing. You'll also note that there's reasonable distribution north to south within the county and east to west. So that was one of the key considerations for us, because moving waste around, transportation not only emits a lot of greenhouse gases, but it is also a very expensive portion of waste management. Okay, so for anybody that is not aware of how much waste is generated in Broward County, this can be alarming. Nearly 5 million tons, and this is for 2023. These are the numbers that are the most recent reports available through the state. Nearly 5 million tons of municipal solid waste is collected. With a population of nearly 2 million, that ends up being about 14 pounds of waste per person per day. And I think we can all agree that we have opportunities to minimize the amount of waste that we're generating and take an active role in the beneficial use. So yes, there is a fair amount that is recycled. It is broken into 2 numbers, the certified recycling numbers and the non-certified. They are summed in the top right corner. There is a recycling rate and an adjusted recycling rate. We are showing the adjusted recycling rate because the state affords some credits for municipal waste to energy. But as you can see, the vast majority of the waste that's generated in Broward County is landfilled. That presents a tremendous opportunity for us. So let's talk about some of the issues and opportunities. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a statutory requirement that Broward County provide disposal capacity for all the waste that's generated within its jurisdictional boundaries. That's capacity. It does not need to be a facility within the county. We know that we're constrained by space, but still, it is a responsibility. We know that by aligning the members of the Solid Waste Authority, by working together, that is incredibly powerful. It changes from that fragmented approach that we're in today to working together. We're challenged by public land limitations. There is cost uncertainty. We also know that there's vertical integration of your solid waste service providers within the county. That gives them some leverage. But they've done it for business reasons, and we believe that the authority can capitalize on that vertical integration. We also know that there's ample existing solid waste management infrastructure within the county today. We're going to talk in a moment about some waste composition analysis that was done that really presents an opportunity to better manage the waste stream components as resources. And the last item, and this was shared by a member of the executive committee at the last collective board meeting with just a few weeks ago, and he said it's a journey to 75% recycling. Right? It's not a light switch that you flip on. It is a process. Chair Ryan shared earlier that the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, they're 50 years into their journey, and they've gotten there. So it's not that there isn't hope. It's not that there isn't a pathway. It's just that we're not going to get there in a single step. So now let's look at the waste composition analysis that was performed last year. There's quite a bit of material from the residential stream that's being recycled, but the compostable material is still in the waste stream. So we agree with the folks that have shared their input that this is a resource that can be capitalized on. And my colleague Travis will talk about the steps that we can take in the future. But let's start with better management of yard trash, right? The vegetative debris, because that will set the stage for enhancing those processes to start to integrate food waste. Now, whether that's at the individual home level or looking at businesses, there is a pathway to capture that material and turn it into a valuable product that is desperately needed in South Florida. There's also quite a few waste stream components that are potentially divertible. They just have to be extracted before it ends up on its way to the landfill or to a waste energy facility. And even with that, there's still a portion of the waste stream that does not yet have a beneficial use in its life cycle. And the numbers are very similar on the commercial side. But to us, when you look at the actual components of the waste stream, nearly 79% of the residential waste stream is recyclable, compostable, or potentially divertible, and nearly 76% of the commercial waste stream is the same. Reference was made earlier to C&D. This is an incredible opportunity. C&D happens to be very heavy. So when we look at the 75% recycling goal, it's weight-based, and this can absolutely move the needle. So nearly 80% of the C&D is recyclable or could be beneficially used. You will still need a landfill. There are materials that do not have life at this time, and they have to be disposed of in a landfill. So now let's talk about some of the work that we've completed. And as a starting point, we had a series of workshops with the executive board where we needed some framework for our analysis. These are presented in no particular order with the exception of one, and that's the first one. We were advised that controlling your solid waste management destiny is the most important principle that needs to be followed so that we don't find ourselves back where we are today, that we really are in control and are not subject to the specter of a crisis. We also are conducting our work with that zero waste lens or zero waste focus, as I mentioned earlier. All municipalities have a responsibility for environmental and growth management compliance, so that is foundational. Long-term disposal solution, and again, that is capacity. You have to have some place to take it to. We have looked at a broad range of waste processing technologies. We have categorized them as ready, commercially viable, to emerging. We have incorporated only those that are commercially proven into this draft master plan. We've also looked at operational excellence, right? The way that government provides these services, whether directly or through contracts, it is critically important that they are viewed in a positive light and as appropriate value. As I mentioned earlier, harmonizing the services county-wide is critically important and is tied into the education and outreach program that we've recommended. And ultimately, it all boils down to best value service, right? We don't necessarily need the lowest cost if the quality isn't there. So it's not absolute, but we hope at the end of the day there's an understanding that there is a cost associated with the services that are received. So there are also some key policies. Again, these were foundational and helped frame our analysis. One, we're looking at a 40-year planning horizon. A lot of our analysis in terms of new facilities that we anticipated looked out at 20 years. What are the needs going to be in 2045? But ultimately, the entire analysis looked out over 40 years. And let me tell you, there will be a lot of waste in 40 years. You think there's a lot today. It just keeps compounding. We're charged with considering out-of-county disposal. Again, that is looking for capacity. And I'm very pleased to learn and understand the intergovernmental partnerships, both within Broward County, but also the discussions around collaboration with neighboring counties. We also were guided to maximize the use of existing infrastructure. It is there. We had, as was mentioned earlier, we had a number of workshops where we invited market players, service providers, to help us understand the services that they currently provide and those that they are interested in providing in the future, just as we spoke with large generators within the county. We were guided to look at annual assessments to recover the full cost of services. Now that excludes collection. That is outside of the interlocal agreement. So that has not been our focus. It was important that we apply reasonable buffers from residential properties, and I understand the comments that were made. Depending on the kind of waste processing facility, we looked at buffers anywhere from a quarter mile to 1 mile from a single-family residential property. And let me tell you, there were not a lot of sites that were available after that screening process. And it represents some significant constraints for the analysis and the recommendations in the master plan. In terms of in-depth research, we looked at the regulatory and policy framework, and what we tried to do is look across the country and beyond for best practices. Bring that to the table and explain how could that be tailored to the Solid Waste Authority. We did deep dives into education and outreach. We've conducted surveys to gather more information. We have looked at the future needs assessment. What kind of infrastructure will be needed? What kind of processing capabilities will be needed to effectuate or to arrive at the county's and the Solid Waste Authority's goal? We looked at a deep dive into innovative future technologies, not just the physical technologies, but also data management. Right? Critically important, and the solid waste industry is there. They recognize the value of applying AI and other data capture opportunities to enhance the quality of their services. And we also looked at the financial framework and funding, and the chair said it is an elephant in the room, but there are some key decision points that need to be made before we can sort of update the financial model that we've developed so that we can answer the question, what does this mean for each resident or business in our community? So what are some of the near-term initiatives that can be done, whether it's by your individual municipalities or by the Solid Waste Authority? Disposal bans. And we've provided a plethora of research on construction and demolition debris, right? It is intuitively smart to limit disposal of construction and demolition debris because it is laden with valuable products, which isn't to say industry is not already extracting those materials. If you look at Monarch, where a lot of that material is disposed, there are C&D recycling facilities already in close proximity and many more around the county. But by having that legislative framework that you can no longer dispose of C&D will change the marketplace and sort of embody the notion of extracting the value from the waste stream components. Diversion or zero waste mandates are another tactic that can be used. Public-private partnerships, another pathway that is a lever that the Solid Waste Authority can use. Embedding performance incentives, another way to assure best value. Government purchasing programs, right? For folks that have been paying attention to what's going on in Miami-Dade County, the government said, we can do better and we need to lead by example in terms of our purchasing policies and what we allow at our public events. And again, material bans. And unfortunately, we live in a world of preemption. That remains a challenge. But that, again, is an opportunity for the Solid Waste Authority members to work together and link arms with other units of government around the state to send a clear message to Tallahassee that you know pretty well what works in your community and what you need to be doing to effectuate the kind of resource stewardship that is important to you. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Travis, who is going to walk us through, and I will join you again towards the end of this presentation.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So again, I'm Travis Barnes. I'm a senior consultant with Resource Recycling Systems. I want to give a little background about kind of my personal history and the consultant team. I think it's important that you know where we come from, that we are zero waste advocates. My entire career was spent with local governments, and so I understand the decision makers in the room, like how do you balance the cost of service, making sure you've got quality service while still trying to achieve those environmental outcomes that we all want. Until very recently, I was working with Hillsborough County just across the state, wrestling with these very same issues, so I understand the challenges. I was afforded the opportunity to go work for Resource Recycling Systems. We have been in the business of recycling for over 40 years. Recycle.com is the company website. And so I was offered the opportunity to go work for a company that is at the forefront of pushing forward zero waste ideologies across the country and in other nations. I'm working on a project in Canada right now, helping to harmonize their extended producer responsibility legislation across the country. We've got staff that are in Japan right now learning how they are managing their waste better than we are in the US. And so we were brought to the team along with SES, we're proud to be partners, to really bring that energy and that focus on how can we do the best. But we have to acknowledge where we're at currently right now in your situation, and that it is going to be a long road ahead with lots of decision points along the way to get to that higher rate of recovery and higher recycling rate that we all want and aspire to be. And so I just want to put that back there, just to let you know that we are advocates. We're in the trenches. I compost at home. I try to get all of my friends and family to do it. So we live this day in and day out, not just here before you as our jobs today. And I think that's important for you all to know that that's where we come from. So we said it and we'll say it over and over and over again. Education and outreach has to be the foundation that we build upon to then have success down the road. And so the task 8 white paper, and I'll add this as well, there's a lot of dense information in all the white papers and the analysis that we provided. I know you all are extremely busy. You got your own jobs, careers, families. So if you want to go take a look at those, you can go. They're often PDFs. You can just search for the findings or the conclusions or the recommendations and kind of get the Cliff Notes version of what's in those papers if you don't have time to read them all. A great way to stay informed, because this presentation with our limited time does not nearly scratch the surface of the amount of work and detail that has gone into that will inform the final plan that we've got. But within that, the Task 8 white paper really focuses on education and outreach. And so with that, we have case studies of how other jurisdictions within the country are succeeding in getting their residents and their businesses to take more ownership of their waste, to take personal responsibility for that waste, and are achieving good environmental outcomes. And there's great examples within the state of Florida as well that we can emulate. And not all of them are extremely expensive. It really depends on the type of program that you're going to do. But there's a variety of tools in the toolbox is what I'm trying to convey with this. But it's essential for here in our community to really get to that uniformity of access to recycling. So in order for people to participate in the recycling and circular economy, they've got to have access to the ability to recycle in a variety of different ways, including hard to recycle items as well. They've got to have the knowledge to feel empowered that they know the right way to recycle and that they're not confused about it or feel that there's distrust in that what they are putting in the bin maybe is not going to the appropriate place and is still ended up as microplastics in the ocean or what have you. So they need to have that knowledge that they feel that, one, they have access to do it, they know how to do it appropriately, but then there also has to be that behavioral change element to get them to actually act on that. So the research has shown that even if you have access and you have the knowledge, not everyone is going to make that decision every day when they are disposing of whatever product they've got in their home, whatever they've consumed in their business. And so you really have to become the trusted voice in the community. And I think the authority has a great opportunity to become that trusted voice, to bring the communities together, to start to align that messaging. And it comes with also having aligned minimum service levels, right? So yard waste is a huge opportunity. We're going to touch on it in more detail. But having yard waste set out at the curb separately so that we can then recover that material for recycling will be essential. The C&D is something that construction demolition debris, just given the weight and volume there, we're going to have to tackle that in order to get to that 75% goal. But having that uniform level of service can also help to harmonize your messaging across jurisdictions. I imagine right now you've got lots of your municipalities that are doing your own recycling messaging. And what does that look like and how are they doing it is probably all over the map, and rightfully so. So how do we get them to harmonize together with a unified voice? And then how do we leverage those community partners within the community? We mentioned the Florida Panthers that are doing a good job, some of the schools that are doing a good job to reach people where they're at, that they engage with those different businesses or those institutions, and they see that they're leading by example, as well as the municipalities leading by example, will help them take that back home and change their behavior in their daily lives. And so that's very important with that. We also want to make sure that there is a component to enhance compliance measures and enforcement. The communities that are really succeeding and aspiring to meet that goal have some enforcement measures. They do have mandatory commercial recycling on the books already. They do have programs where they'll go out into the community, and if there's a lot of contamination on a given route, they'll engage with the residents to make sure that they're getting direct feedback on how they can better recycle. So there is a level of engagement with the community that's needed beyond just informing people to really make sure that they're doing the right thing, and we'll talk about some of those tools as well. As Daniel mentioned, we did an extensive review of all available technologies, and the Task 9 white paper goes into everything from all aspects of waste management, from collections to all the different types of processing facilities, the types of equipment that is now being seen on collection vehicles, that's being on tablets in the field with staff, that's being utilized at the different facilities to monitor what's coming in real time. Like most industries, the pace of technology change is impressive right now. And there really is a lot of things that are coming on the horizon that we need to keep an eye on. Not all of them are necessarily something we can implement right now, but have tremendous potential. And so for the authority, as you're forming a new framework to work together, it's very important that we adopt best practices so that we can collect that information from the various collection points throughout the community so that those systems can kind of talk to each other in real time. That will provide more actionable data that we can use to inform future decision making. And there's also a component to that that is enhancing customer service, enhancing customer responsiveness, which builds trust in your system and gets that further buy-in that they want to, participate in additional programs or maybe take the extra step to go to a household hazardous waste drop-off site when they have just been throwing that material away. And so it's essential that we, embrace those. But when it comes to the actual processing technology, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on those that were proving, lower risk, that we know are commercially viable, have been operating in the United States for well over a year. And there are some emerging technologies that have been touted in an academic setting or small pilots, but they've not been proven to demonstrate the capability to handle the scope and the volume of waste that you're generating here within the community. Within this, it's also important to note there's a public safety component, and there's also the safety of our employees. So the solid waste industry, unfortunately, is one of the top 10, top 6 industries in the, oh, sorry. I was doing it on my computer, not on that. Here you go. You got it? Okay. Thank you, Daniel. So yeah, what I was saying is the health and safety of our workers is very important. So there's a lot of technology that you're now seeing on the trucks and at facilities that can help safeguard employees, but also safeguard your investment in those assets. We know the unfortunate situation in Miami-Dade where they lost their waste energy facility due to a fire. There is a growing threat of fires in the waste stream with lithium-ion batteries and some other materials. And so it's paramount that people understand that those small electronics they use in their daily life, when they discard that in their trash, they're putting that employee, that truck, and the facility transfer stations, wherever that whole value chain of everything that touches that at risk. And so there's a lot of emerging technology focused on that as well. Next slide, Daniel. So getting into the different types of technologies that we reviewed, again, we looked at everything that's being used really around the world right now and in the US domestically. And this is an oversimplified slide, but essentially we want to focus on those waste minimization, waste reduction policies first, right? The best thing to do is to have a business or a resident manage that waste at their property before it ever gets into our system and then becomes something that we, as the authority, as your local governments, have to then collect, take somewhere, process it. Every time you're managing or touching that ton, there's a cost, there's a risk involved with it. If we can empower people to minimize their waste to begin with, to compost at home so that food waste doesn't enter our system, that's the best environmental outcome, that's the most cost-effective outcome, and that's what we should be striving for, and there's a lot of policies in the draft plan that speak to that. Once waste is generated and hits our system, there are opportunities for reuse of the waste. There's programs across the state that are really focused on enhancing donation and thrifting and other forms of reuse, swap shops, things like that. Those are low-cost, effective ways. Even though the tonnage might be lower, the overall environmental benefit is extremely high when you get an item right back into reuse versus, a plastic bottle going back into, say, recycled textiles or something like that. So there are reuse opportunities, and those should definitely be something that we look at. You also have diversion programs. So we had mentioned the use of single-use plastics. So I stayed at a great hotel last night. Not to pick on them, I won't name any names. Breakfast this morning was lovely. Lots of people were everywhere. Looks like a lot of people were here on vacation. Single-use plastics were all that was used. I would say every single person there probably generated at least 2 pounds of waste this morning just from all the plastic plates, the straws, everything else that was there. And that's what we're doing all day, every single day. And that was just one hotel, right? Not just to pick on the hotel industry. When we have kids' birthday parties, pet peeve of mine, you see the little plastic goodie bags that everyone gives away now to all of their kids that just have a bunch of little plastic, right? That's a decision we're making that ends up costing us because they're going to play with that for 1 or 2 days, maybe a couple hours, and then it's going to be right back into the trash, right? So there are options to reduce that waste and to refuse things as well. Once we get into conversion processes, I'll touch on that in a second. We are trying to recapture that material and keep it out of the waste stream. But for those items that can't be readily recovered right now, there is the landfill. And so in one of the previous public workshops, we had a slide that's kind of the reality of recovery. And it really speaks to the fact that even with your best intentions and those communities that are doing great, there is still a portion of the waste stream that you need to have a landfill to properly dispose of. And there's also the resiliency factor. We're in a hurricane-prone area. You need to have that capacity if you get hit with something major. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff cannot be recovered. The priority to get your community back on its feet, back to normalcy, takes paramount effort in that time, and really that leads to more landfilling when things like that happen. When it comes into your conversion processes, we've got the biological, so that can be the composting operations that we've talked about, most people are familiar with, as simple as backyard composting to really industrial cell composting. You've also got anaerobic digestion, which is a proven technology. It's an emerging market in Florida. The Department of Environmental Protection is actually permitting a new facility in the state right now. And I spoke to them a few weeks ago. They're excited to go through that regulatory permitting process to learn from it. They're anticipating that there's going to be a lot more interest in that. I know that there's multiple companies that are looking at Florida to increase their footprint for anaerobic digestion to better manage the food waste component of our waste stream. You've also got mechanical separation. So this is your typical material recovery facilities, like most of your single stream recycling that you currently do within the community goes to these types of facilities where they use a variety of technology to manually sort that material out. Those facilities are getting much more technologically advanced in terms of their efficiency, their safety, their ability to target smaller and diverse material types. And so that's something where your local partners are on the forefront of producing some of the top performing facilities in the country with mechanical separation. A lot of your construction and demolition debris recovery facilities would also use a lot of this mechanical technology. And then you've got your thermal processes, waste to energy, the mass burn waste to energy facilities that you're familiar with are most commonly used. The YW there is actually for yard waste for the biochar that we recommend in all of the scenarios of the master plan. That is something that is a proven technology as well, but is emerging within the state of Florida. For example, Leon County has a pilot where they're taking a portion of their yard waste and converting it to biochar, and they're intending to, next year in 2026, process all their yard waste that way. And so we have that as a component of your plan as well. Next slide, please. So with part of the future needs assessment, again, the Task 4 white paper, which is one of the more extensive ones, we did kind of game out the different scenarios. So to Daniel's point earlier, we looked at the planning horizon of 2045 and what types of waste would be generated at that time, the quantities of waste, and then what would be the scale, scope, size of facilities needed to reach a 75% or more recovery rate of that material. And so we are not advocating that you go out and construct all of these facilities right now, by no means. We're showing kind of like an academic exercise that you guys have a tremendous amount of waste here, and it's going to take a variety of facilities and combination of approaches to be able to take a bite out of that tonnage apple to get to where you want to go. However, we are recommending that you utilize the existing infrastructure that you have within the community now to maximize the ability to move quicker and to be probably more cost effective in the short term with it. Scenario A came out as being the most cost effective, practical, and most likely to succeed of the scenarios. All 5 scenarios had some commonalities that I want to touch on, though. They included that robust education and outreach that we talked about. All of them modeled that. All of them modeled having an additional 8 community drop-off centers to provide more recycling access, access to hard-to-recycle items. You can do scrap metal and tires and other things there in addition to your household hazardous waste. Those facilities can also serve as outreach hubs in your community and really engage with the residents that are coming in a variety of ways to anything from surveying to getting them to take literature home or distribute to their communities. They all included 3 transfer stations. We mentioned the need to be able to have a quick haul distance to cut down those costs. So geographically, the north, the central, southern portion of the county, we envision having additional transfer stations so that material can be directed to, and then we could take it to beneficial recycling facilities. They also all included additional landfill capacity. So to Daniel's point, we are not saying that there's going to be a new landfill in Broward County, but that the reality of the situation shows there's a tremendous amount of waste. We're only going to get so far over a certain period of time, and they're going to still need additional capacity. And so you need to be thinking now to lock that in as best as you can, because land's not going to get any cheaper, and the availability of that is dwindling, and the costs are going to continue to rise. Within scenario A in particular, there is no new waste to energy facilities, something to point out. It did include 2 organics processing facilities, so we're envisioning that curbside, source separated yard waste going to facilities where it could be mulched. There's colorization options that you can do with the mulch to make it more attractive to market it as well, in addition to the biochar facilities that I mentioned earlier. And those combination of facilities will help you get closer to that goal, but we do realize that it's at 62%, even with the modeling, it doesn't quite get you there yet. However, this scenario does afford the ability to be most flexible over time. So as the authority grows and evolves and becomes the trusted voice and has the ability to work together more collaboratively, there can be more progressive policies that are implemented or facilities down the road. It doesn't set you on a path where you're set on something that you can't then pursue something more. It's kind of the base level building block. Next slide, Daniel. So as part of this, there was an extensive siting criteria that was performed looking at all of the different types of facilities that were potentially going to be recommended. What was the minimum acres that would be needed, the tonnage throughput that they could potentially process, the setbacks. from residential areas. There was a lot of other criteria that went into looking at the siting criteria as well, the zoning, endangered species. There's a whole laundry list of things that you can look at in that Task 6 white paper. The bottom line and the quick takeaway from this is that you all have very limited land given how built out the community is. I think everyone's aware of that. There was only a handful of publicly owned properties that came out as potentially being able to use, and many of them were small where you can't always site some of the facilities that we envisioned. And so you have a lot of challenges with lack of land. And so that might mean that you have to utilize some strategic procurements and have private sector auctions where maybe they can go out and acquire that land, because we were limited to looking at what is publicly owned properties that we could potentially leverage more quickly as part of our siting analysis. Next slide. So one of the properties that is under the authority's ownership is the Alpha 250 site. For those that aren't familiar with that, it's a site that, again, is under current ownership of the authority, and it's about 22 acres there. However, the usable acreage of that, based on the limitations of that parcel, is about, 7.85 acres is what's available for industrial use. So even though there is significant more acreage there, some of that is under conservation easement, and it's limited as to what could feasibly be located there. That said, even though it's not a great location to locate some of the larger facilities that we envision, it does have a lot of strategic value for the community over the long term, and we'd encourage the authority to consider keeping that. It could be used for pilot projects, demonstration projects that then could grow into something larger. It could be used as another temporary debris management site in the event of a major hurricane. There's a lot of value that it could be used for, and so I would caution the short-sighted need to maybe to sell that to get money when we know they're not making any more land. It's going to be hard for local governments and the authority to acquire more property. The usefulness of that will probably grow over time, but there are some realities in that it's a limited use for the site currently. Next slide. So the recommended path forward right now is what we'll focus on. Again, we've touched on these. Thanks, Daniel. The strategic priorities, and I probably sound like a broken record, but the key is that we have to get people to take ownership and personal responsibility for their waste, whether it's in their business, whether they're at home, and then hopefully that can then spur into a community-wide philosophy that when your visitors come through, they also see and feel that the community is really invested in that zero waste mindset that we all want to see. And then there's opportunities for them throughout the community to participate when they are here visiting. Making it easy and convenient for people to recycle is essential. Within this, there's going to be a communications plan that we've laid out, and I think I'll touch on it in another slide. But again, the key point of that is you've got to reach people in multiple ways, multiple touch points throughout the year, and it can't be just a one-off campaign that you do and you don't sustain. I know from personal experience in my previous county where I worked, we had a very robust education outreach campaign that we were funding. We were seeing very good results from that. Budget concerns came up. We had other things that came on the chopping block. We made a decision to cut that funding. We quickly backslid way faster than you would imagine, particularly in communities that are growing as rapidly as you are, because people are coming from all over the place with their own ideas of what they can and can't do, and that just leads to more confusion. And the recycling rate in the county I came from reflects a quick drop as soon as we let off the gas pedal of investing in that in a sustained program. So it can't be one-off campaigns. It's got to be something that you do, you continue to do, you can continue to invest upon, you continue to improve, and you continue to target maybe those communities that you're not reaching with whatever outreach that you're doing. So continue to look for ways to reach people where they're at, reach everyone throughout the economy, throughout all the different types of communities is very important. Leveraging economies of scale is essential. We've mentioned that, but what does that mean? So if you are an individual municipality and you're going out to get contracting for your recycling service or maybe yard waste processing, your tonnage is not nearly as comparable as if you were working collectively amongst all of the communities and getting potentially a much better price, because that company that's going to be doing that work for you, if they know they've got that guaranteed volume coming in, then they can bank on getting a better return on investment over the course of time. It can justify new capital improvements to the facilities. It could justify potentially new facilities entirely. And so having the ability to work together is going to help you leverage better pricing down the road, but also harmonizing those services is going to get the public to understand if they do move throughout the community or as they live, work, and play throughout your county here, that they know there's a consistent level of service everywhere. And we're not saying that has to be exactly the same in every community. Every community is going to want to make sure that they're providing the level of service they feel is appropriate for their community. But in terms of how material is set out and some minimum service levels is going to have to be something that we all strive to work towards to help cut through some of the confusion and make it easier to collect and target that material. Let's see here. So, you know, when and where to build facilities is something that will come up. But right now, the plan is really focused on, you've got existing infrastructure. There was a slide we showed earlier that showed all the different facilities that you got within the county. There is adequate capacity at many of those facilities to take in more material. So at first, I think the best and prudent approach will be to work collaboratively to get your contracts aligned and to have it where you can use those economies of scale and the harmonized service delivery to have some of those strategic procurements. And then the role of local government and the authority would be to fill in the gaps where that's not occurring in the private market or where you feel that there's not competitive pricing and therefore you've got to test the market even with a public-private partnership or something of that effect to hopefully deliver longer-term stability and better pricing for your community. So some of the specific recommendations that we have, again, harmonize the minimum level of service. One of the big ones is the yard waste set out and the single stream recycling. There's still about 20% of your single family households within the county right now that do not receive single stream recycling service. That's one of the low hanging fruits that we know works well, and providing that access will increase your recycling rate. The yard waste is a big component of the waste stream. And that's something where it's fairly easy and cost effective to get at that material once it's source separated and set out appropriately. There are companies that can come in and do the grinding and mulching on behalf of the county, and there's competition in that market space. We're also looking at mandatory C&D recycling ordinances. There's a variety of different approaches for that. There was a white paper that we submitted just looking at C&D related policies, and there's examples from within Florida that are already being successful at mandating certain aspects of C&D recovery, and there's a variety of ways to go about that. So it will be important to work together to figure out what's the best fit for Broward County, and then how can you implement that to make it where over time you continue to raise the bar with it. Mandatory commercial recycling is another one. The commercial volume that is generated here is tremendous, as we saw from the previous waste generation slides and the composition study slides. Many communities in Florida already have commercial recycling, and it's proven to be effective. You've got Alachua County, Lee County, Sarasota County, just to name a few that have already done this. Some of them have done this decades ago. And you've got City of Orlando as a fairly recent example that have moved in this direction, and they were very thoughtful in how they phased in the implementation of it to make sure there was robust stakeholder engagement. They phased it in where most of your small businesses were not impacted at first. They had time to adapt and change their business model and look at their operations, knowing that something was coming over a longer period of time horizon. But they did target the larger quantity generators at first, many of which are already doing a good job of recycling because they know it makes sense to do so and it can save their costs if they do so responsibly. The other thing is to look at those additional drop-off sites to increase access like we talked about, and to serve as education hubs within the community, and then to also help safeguard your future system, again, getting those hazardous materials out, which are most detrimental to the environment, and also pose that fire risk that we talked about, because I can't understate enough, the data is showing how alarming the increasing incidence of fires are on collection trucks and at collection facilities. It's a very, very hot button issue, pun intended, within the waste industry, and a lot of focus is going into that. Those drop-off sites can help to serve as a good resource for communities to help people have easy ways to participate instead of just throwing it in their garbage and posing a risk to the system. And then food waste collection is something that will need to be explored in the future. Scenario A has the ability to pilot food collection drop-off sites. So many communities in the US have started to do this as a way to kind of get their foot in the water with food waste. The permitting implications of food waste recovery are much harder than vegetative waste, but they can totally be done. And so what we recommend is you've got to start somewhere, and there's some community partners here that are already doing some composting. With the volume that you would get from these small scale efforts, it's really about building that community awareness. There's also backyard composting programs that have been very successful, and other jurisdictions within Florida have done that. Pretty cost effective, and you can get community buy-in by empowering people to take ownership of their food waste and do it right in their backyards. Those are all things that the authority needs to be looking at. And then there's a variety of complementing supporting policies and ordinance that we need to look at. So if, for example, we want maybe a multifamily apartment complex that has ample land to be able to have maybe a community garden on site or to do composting on site, does your development ordinances and your zoning ordinances allow that? Those are types of things that can be a barrier that each city would have to look at to see what can we do to encourage and foster and empower those stakeholders that want to do the right thing to do so. I know in my previous jurisdiction, we had a community that was really wanting to do a community garden and start some community composting. Unfortunately, the zoning regulations did not allow for them to do that. So we were working with that department, like they want to do the right thing. As a solid waste department, we want to empower them to do the right thing. How can we sit down together and do that? So there's a host of policies that your communities may have that might need to be modified in some way to reduce the barrier to enable people that want to take ownership of their waste to do so on site. Gotcha. All right. But it's appreciated. All right. I'm getting the hook. So, all right. So we talk again about education and outreach. We want to make sure that we have ample time for public comment. So totally understand that. We've hit on this over and over and over again. Education and outreach, it's very essential. We've got to do it. The plan outlines some specific tactics that you would need to do. And the key, again, that we've mentioned is that it takes sustained investment. You've got to leverage your community partners to get that word out in a variety of ways. In my previous jurisdiction, one of the good things that we did was partner with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Lightning Bug. And we had some commercials and stuff where the Lightning Bug was the one out there giving the message, and it wasn't one of our recycling staff. That was very well received. Those are just examples of that. The innovation technologies that we talked about, the white papers go in exhaustive detail on all the available technology that's out there. I think the key here is that we recommend that there needs to be a committee that's focused on keeping an eye on these technologies. And when you start to look at, what are the minimum standards that you want to have in your collections contracts or your processing contracts, you're looking at what's the best available technology right now that we want to make sure that our potential vendors are deploying, what's the cost effectiveness of that. And so having a committee that is tasked with that would be prudent, especially given the rate of change with technology right now. Organics management, we belabored it. It's extremely important given the percentage of the waste stream that is food waste and yard waste. It's going to be essential for us to really focus on that. The yard waste is the low-hanging fruit with that one initially, and then you need to shift gears and start to focus on food waste, which can be a little bit more challenging, but there are some great examples of communities that are doing really good with that. And that's something where it'll take a little bit more time to get there, but the yard waste is a low-hanging fruit and should be something that we start working on immediately. In scenario A, this is just a quick overview of it. We've talked about this quite a bit. I think the key thing here is that with these facilities that are listed, again, those we're looking at an academic exercise in 2045, given the amount of waste and the type components of the waste stream that you would have, those are the types of facilities that would be envisioned needing to process that volume of waste. So again, we're not advocating that you go out and start building these facilities right now, but that you keep an eye to the future, like the size and the scale, the scope of what potentially would be needed. And to really focus on, what can you do right now, which is, again, restore that curbside recycling service to all of your single-family households, really focus on targeting materials that we can easily get to, the construction, demolition debris, and the vegetative waste in particular, and then providing more access to recycling through those drop-off sites. So these are just some of the estimated facility costs with this. Please take these with a grain of salt, but they are informed from actual facilities and pro formas from other facilities we worked on across the U.S. It shows just some examples of their capacity, throughput, the potential capital expenditures, as well as the annual operating costs of that. Key thing on this is that it does not include the cost of land, knowing that we didn't have a specific parcel that we were targeting to put one of these on. And so that would drive up the cost substantially to acquire that property potentially. And we know that there's limited options within the county for land, at least under public ownership currently.
All right, we'll give you another applause. Thank you, Travis. All right, so let's bring it all home. So the call to action in this slide simply shows that it's a pathway, right? So first, the master plan needs to be accepted. Then quickly following after that is the policy development, the communication platform, developing the C&D management, and so on and so forth. Right? It is a process. The idea is that we start with the basics, so it has the least disruption in terms of how waste is currently managed. We try to optimize that. We always keep our eye out over the horizon for what is coming next and what the needs are so that we can avoid the crisis. I do want to address the point about the phrase in our master plan that talks about there isn't a need for waste energy at this time. It's important to understand that if the behavior changes that we're advocating for and we know are possible do not materialize, you have a lot of waste and the waste quantity is only growing over time. Right now, there is one commercially proven volume reduction technology that does not conflict with recycling, produces energy, actually can enhance recycling through metal recovery. We're looking for an honest discussion about the value that plays within this community to help the community achieve the authority to achieve 75%. We're not saying it's needed today, but we're all in this together, and we're counting on you. So in terms of next steps, we have two more public workshops scheduled for next week. We will be revising and issuing the final master plan based on public input that is vetted through the organization of the authority. We're going to continue the engagement with both ILA and non-ILA members, because wouldn't it be nice if this really were a county-wide initiative? With the adoption of the master plan, the transition from a strategy document to the tactical plan, we want to leverage existing and establish new authority subcommittees. That includes activating TAC, which we view as a critical success factor for all of the municipalities and the authority as a whole. Developing the legislation and policies, particularly focused on C&D management, yard trash, assuring or securing flow control, harmonizing the materials management. We know that we need to create and implement a sustainable financial plan over the long term that goes hand in hand with the communication plan. And once we have the flow control, then we can start to issue solicitations for those materials that meet the requirements and the desires and the dreams of the authority in terms of beneficial use. And in terms of intermediate term, looking out over the horizon, we have to continue to assess what those infrastructure needs will be so that we can avoid crises in the future. So now the formal presentation is complete. I'm going to turn it back to Chair Ryan for feedback from elected officials, from staff. I think everybody knows, as I just mentioned, we have two more public workshops next week. All of these documents are on the SWA website. We encourage your continued engagement and support and feedback so that this master plan really achieves the desire to be inclusive and reflect the wishes of Broward County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, so we'll start with the elected officials' comments. I know Mayor Messam, you were also interested in a comment. What I would suggest, obviously there's no time limit on comments from the elected officials, but be mindful, we've got about 45 minutes, and to the extent you can be targeted, great. There'll be other opportunities for further engagement, so this should not be seen as the last. What I would ask is, as you introduce yourself, give us your name and your title and what city or county you're from. We'll start on my left and we'll go back and forth.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan, particularly for stopping me earlier because you saved the audience from a 20-page speech that you and Commissioner Furr covered. I don't have the trip down memory lane like Commissioner Furr did, but I remember all those events. My name is Bob Hartman. I'm the Vice Mayor of Southwest Ranches. I want to start out with something that's a little different than probably most of the other municipalities. If you're here from Southwest Ranches, please raise your hand. So we've generated some community interest, and I really want to encourage everybody to do the same within your own municipalities. When Commissioner Furr and Mayor Ross came out to talk to us about the ILA about 2 years ago, it sparked some enthusiasm in our community, particularly when we heard that right over the fence, I can see the Broward County landfill from my yard. I'm a birder. I love it. It collects more vultures than anywhere else in Broward County. It's pretty amazing to see. But the fact that it keeps growing, that's the worrisome part. And then when they particularly said that that is a potential site for an incinerator, we freaked out. We really got organized. And from that discussion, the council all acted. We wrote articles for the various local newspapers. Our mayor, Steve Brycruz, sits on the Solid Waste Authority. We engaged. I encourage you to do the same with your own communities because this is a matter of life and death. This is a matter of the quality of our lives. I have 2 kids. They're in their 20s and 30s, okay? I expect them to live in Broward County their entire lives. Do they really want to be continuously exposed to these toxins that the industry exposes us to? I have 2 grandchildren. I expect them to be living here a lot longer than 50 years from now. And I don't want them to say, Grandpa and his friends didn't get this right, because we left an opportunity for incinerators out there. You know, the federal government regulates incinerators, and you'll hear the waste to energy industry say, we conform with all laws. They have to, or they'd be shut down by the EPA. The problem with those laws, just like the ones that come out of Tallahassee regulating plastic straws, are heavily influenced by lobbyists, okay? Those numbers, if you hear that dioxin and sulfur dioxide are not measured in ounces or pounds in what can come out the stack, it's measured in tons. And what comes out of that stack in the middle of Broward County, and I love when I heard, oh, it doesn't smell on site, because the stack carries it off site. But when the wind is out of the southeast, those contaminants go all the way to the Mississippi Valley. We worry about the Everglades, and we should. But how about everything in between here and Louisiana and Mississippi and parts past that as well? We don't need incineration. And what worries me is that waste to energy or pyrolysis, so there's a whole lot of euphemisms for burning garbage. If we leave an opening there, they're going to constantly convince the successors on our Solid Waste Authority board that this is really the way to go. It's more efficient, it's more effective. Well, if you want to see how efficient and effective it is today, next time you're on 595 heading westbound on the highway, going out to the western parts of the county, when you drive past 595, instead of looking at the marinas on the right, look left. You're going to see a giant, what looks like a landfill, but it's not. It's the ash that's cleaned out of that incinerator facility. And I'll tell you something, you think that the landfills are bad, and I'm not here to advocate them. I think we need to eliminate them as well. But those piles are highly toxic, highly toxic. We saw it up in West Palm. The council from Southwest Ranches went up and heard the whole presentation, and it's all wonderful things. They meet every government requirement. It's efficient, it's effective. The great thing we learned up there is their public outreach. But still, with all that beauty and loveliness, the communities around it are being contaminated by what comes out the stack at the landfill. I want to give you a little observation I've made. And
just for a matter of time, because there's a number of other folks, so if you can
I'll make it brief. I dropped 20 pages.
Oh my goodness.
We go to Italy every couple of years. We have family over there. And, you know, we think U.S. thinks we're way ahead of everybody else on everything. Well, this little thing happened about 80 years ago called World War II that dramatically impacted everybody in Europe. Italians were starving, okay? Nobody was throwing anything out. They figured out back in those days how to recycle. If you live in Italy, you don't worry about recycling. You have to do it, okay? There's 9 different bins that you have to put your stuff in. Now, like true Italians, remember the Romans were the first ones that spread commerce all over Europe. They're still doing it. Every one of those waste streams has a home, has a place to make money. And it's the same all over Europe. I don't think Italy is at zero waste, but they're approaching it, as a lot of places in Europe are, a lot of the countries that were impacted by the war. Learn to recycle early, learn to reuse those things or repurpose things. We need to get on that same approach, that same path. I really encourage that we drop any discussion on incinerators, because nothing good will come of it, okay?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
In conclusion,
Mayor?
Good morning. Mayor Joy Cooper from the city of Hallandale Beach. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I think I probably am the longest municipal elected official in the room. And I was dubbed the trash lady a couple years ago, maybe 24. And I do want to go briefly back, because Hallandale, as part of 5 cities, actually partnered with Reuter and did single stream recycling back in a day. And just like we're hearing today, I hate to use the word, but the NIMBY, that's going to start smelling. We're going to compost. And that was closed, and we had rolled back many of the programs we had between newspaper. We still do single stream recycling, but I want to touch really on the elephant in the room, and it's just a total contrast and comparison. My dad was the chief chemist of the state of New Jersey, God rest his soul, World War II vet. He actually wrote a lot of the wastewater management and lead poisoning laws out of DC years ago. And back in the day, and I lived in Philly around all the horrible whatever, and he said, Joy, the only way, everybody's going to talk about a lot of things. And, this is, I'm not going to tell you how long, given my age. The only way to really, truly get rid of trash and don't on the room is really burn it. Burn it. What do you do with the ash? But back in the day, somebody had said earlier from the industry, we're not looking at plants that were spewing smoke out of everywhere. There's newer technologies. I visit, not to sound ostentatious, for the past 20 years, the lovely island of St. Bart's. They have 10,000 year-round population, but they have tourism year-round. They have one of the cleanest, best trash-to-energy incineration plants that I have ever seen. I personally toured it. I've seen what they do, how the water and the affluent literally from that plant, burning the energy, using the energy for the island, using the energy to help fuel their desalinization plant with, I swear, water from their affluent, from the steam, going right out into their bay. They are regulated by a common, from their cooperative through France. They have very, very strict rules and regulations, going back to my colleague from Southwest, how they manage it. He did bring up one point about the fly ash and the ash from the filters. I've been on that island. I've watched it explode with population. I don't even know if my figures are right with the population now. But those even newer technologies are starting to implement that ash into construction and into the ability to recycle it into possibly, and I'm not an engineer, possibly into more and modern things in construction. I love what they're doing with C&D. I have a problem now, and I'm sure a lot of our electeds can agree with it. And I love the speaker from Tampa. I forget your name. You said you were from Tampa. We have to own some ownership. We want everything to be really cheap, don't we? We're elected officials. If I may call you Beam. Beam said it, I don't care what happens to the trash as long as it's picked up. Tampa, they don't provide free bulk pickup. in many of the areas. If you want to get rid of furniture in all the new construction they're doing, the new homeowners association, $140 to get bulk pickup. And that's from the county. We make it much too easy. I like to say we're a private hauler, because we are. We're one of the few smaller cities that have our own equipment. Sure, we partner, we have great partnerships, but until we start really talking about, yeah, we have trash. And even California, their numbers of recycling going to zero waste for over 20 years, they're about 41%. So let's be real. We do want to recycle. I donate a lot of my stuff, my clothes. I've been recycling. I guess my help is now. I have to now re-educate my community, because we're not recycling. They're not taking it. They're not doing it. So I suggest that we are starting from scratch. And I want to be what I say all the time. I'm not to lose money, but I am not a private industry. I'm not for profit. I'm for people. So I want to commend the board, because I think that partnership, which I lived through too 20 years ago with Mr. Greenstein and the whole R&R board, that ugly history. But we have to be real, and we have to be pragmatic, and we can't be populist and say, oh, we're going to go do zero waste. It is not happening. California is doing it, but we have to do every plan that we can. And I know I'm not a member of this organization. I'm part of Broward County. Look forward to the work and the result. But obviously, being pragmatic, I didn't want to spend $300,000 on it in 2020. We are at fiscal insolvency at a point, and we've righted the ship. But thank you for the work that you're doing, Mayor Ryan, your co-chair, and thank you, Mr. Deach. It's good to see you out.
Right, thank you. Raises a point that for those communities that have not joined, our purpose and our commitment's always been to continue that partnership. Just because you haven't joined doesn't mean you're not part of the solution. Okay. And second, Italy has 36 WTE plants, just FYI. So they, even with great recycling, they still need it. Floor is yours.
Joshua Rydell, City of Coconut Creek. I'm a commissioner in the city. I'm not going to speak about substantive issues with the plan, with the future. This document that they've created is is an encyclopedia historically about Broward County. It's an encyclopedia of data given by all cities, so it's a really important document. I commend you on the work. Obviously, I'm on the executive board. The reason I'm speaking today is I'm actually speaking to the audience. If we're going to have real buy-in, because there's going to be coming a time, and very shortly, that we're going to have to go to all the cities again and get this approved. The participation candidly lacks. The fact that we need quorum at certain meetings and we don't make it is disappointing.
We've always met quorum.
No, barely, candidly. And the reason I say it, Mike, and it's not to you guys, it's to everybody here. We need more participation from all the cities. If there's staff members here, you're elected officials, whether you're on the governing board or you're on the executive committee, I'm just asking personally to show up, because this is going to be a global effort for Broward County. And while we may all have criticisms, listen, City of Coconut Creek, Southwest Ranches, and Miramar, we're probably half the room right now because of hot button issues. It shouldn't be that way. We have to look at this, and Beam, I give you a lot of credit, even though we disagree. We all have to take our hats off now to figure out how we can move together more successfully. So if you're a public works director here, you're a city manager here, ask your elected to come and participate, because that is what is going to move this forward. Because if I'm on a dais and I don't hear about this, and it comes and I get Beam and Mike coming to say why I should continue and why I should approve this, and I know nothing about it, it's a much harder sell with whatever the issues are that we overcome together. So I'm just urging you in this room, whether it's a neighboring city, please show up at these meetings. Please give feedback to the executive director. He trickles it down to all of us, and we are changing as we go every day on this. That's all my comment, and thank you for everyone's work.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. My name is Carol Shuham. I'm a city commissioner in the city of Hollywood, and we have a great representation from Hollywood here today, as well as many other cities. First, I just want to extend a sincere thanks to the chair and vice chair and all of the fellow executive board and governing board members of the Solid Waste Authority. It has been an inordinate effort, not only just the volume of work, the number of hours that have been put into this, and the complexity of the subject matter, but really just keeping people together. So you guys have done a great job. And huge thanks to SCS and their sub-consultants, Travis and Daniel. The amount of just intellectual effort that has gone into this is like nothing I personally have ever been a part of, and proud to be a part of it. The past few months, like I said, have been an incredible education, and they have generated an extraordinary opportunity that's before us. But I want to talk about what happens before the plan is finalized, before the plan is implemented. What we have now for all of you is a resource. It's a resource that we can use today to improve what we're currently doing in our cities. We have a great staff from California, our executive director, Todd Storty. We have Lisa Jones, who's here, and they are here to answer your questions. What can your city start doing today to turn your trash into treasure? There is no need to wait. I happen to be very confident this will become a reality, but you can see the amount of time that it's going to take. Don't let your city wait. In Hollywood, in Lauderdale, and the county, we have passed single-use plastic bans, and I urge any city that has a beach to do the same. Try to keep single-use plastics off your beach. It doesn't mean that you have to have fancy boxed water or canned water like we tend to do. Have a big jug of water and paper cups at your city events. There's just so many opportunities that we're missing to start today to reduce the amount of waste that is going into the stream. Hollywood, Coral Springs, and other cities have composting pilot programs in place. It's not a huge amount, it's aspirational. It's showing that our residents, that a city can partner with them to help them reduce what they are putting into the waste stream. And finally, Hollywood now is starting to look at how can we compost our yard waste. What is happening to the huge amount of yard waste that we're generating? So I really just want to emphasize, and the county, as we said, is starting to look at better ways to handle C&D. Finally, when I look at Daniel's timeline, a slide or two ago, it saddened me to see the missed opportunities over the past decades. But today is not a day to look back. It is a day for all of us to look forward. Together, this collection of Broward cities, Broward County, all of our partners can do great things. And I, as I said, am confident that all of the good work that's gone into this provides for us an excellent future with an aspiration of zero waste. And that is what we want for our children and our grandchildren. So thank you all so much. Just being here means so much to this executive committee. Thank you.
Well done.
Hi, good morning. Commissioner Sandra Welch, City of Coconut Creek. And I've been on this journey for about the past 8 years, in and around on the governing board and in the background, but nonetheless very, very interested in what transpires. So I just want to talk about some of the things that were presented here today. And first thing, beginning with the education, and I believe it was mentioned, 2 of the successful programs that have taken place both on a private campus. That started with a middle school student and his environmental teacher. So hat check that one, how that can roll out to the adults. The second you highlighted was the Broward Green Schools campaign, was headed up by a young lady that I believe she was in the 9th grade. She started the Sierra Club Youth Club, and she took that to a resolution to the school board and is now rolling it out. And I hope that we'll have a school in Coconut Creek that will be one of those pilot projects, because Anaga isn't going to give up. So I'm just saying our students are the ones that are going to lead our education efforts, no matter what we do and wherever we do it. So there's that. And the second thing, I know Mayor Ryan likes to talk about and brag about his Panthers, go Cats, but you know, commercial-wise, we just recently, and I mentioned this, the Northwest Elected Council, we had a Sprouts that opened up brand new in Coconut Creek, and the manager hired an environmental a graduate with a degree because he wanted to do the very same thing on site. They're currently at 70%. Their goal is 90, and they're going to get there. So, and then to our own little efforts in Coconut Creek with our 2 drop-off centers. We're not even halfway into our fiscal year, and we've currently, for the glass, the composting, the cans, the plastic bottles, that's cardboard, 50.4 tons. And that's only a few hundred people of our residents that voluntarily come. And that's another part of the education, because I meet at those drop-off centers brand new residents to our city from other states that are, we're very used to doing this. And they wonder why they have to come to a drop-off center, but they're glad they do, because at least they're still able to recycle. So there's another low-hanging fruit, as you've been referring to, is our brand new residents, whether it's as they're signing up for water or whatever it might be. Let's get them engaged. They're our best ambassadors. They were already doing it when they got before they got here. So our students and our brand new residents. And I'm going to end on the C&D management. Love, love, love that, because one of our, C&D should be the last place that it goes into any landfill. That capacity could open up the capacity that we have for any of our landfills for something that is the last resort, right? So I liken it to one of our sister cities in the state of Florida that lived next to a construction and demolition landfill that suffered for years with the rotten egg, pungent odors emanating from it. And it was coming from the hydrogen sulfide, emanating from there. So the diverting the C&D from our landfills is a big twofer. It eliminates that large capacity and the environmental result to our surrounding residents. So on that I end. I thank you for the plan. We were anxious to see it, so let's get going.
Okay, great. All right. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yvette Coburn, Vice Mayor for the City of Miramar. I was recently appointed to the Governing Board. I want to say thank you to the Executive Board and the consultants who have put this plan together. It is certainly something that Broward County needs, and I think we can certainly all agree on that. I would definitely like to see more specifics. This is a draft. I certainly want to see more specifics in terms of cost and timeline as we come to a final product for us to approve on the governing board. I also like to say that the governing board, it is my understanding, has not been meeting regularly on this plan. And I think it is essential, and I encourage the executive board to try to engage as many of the members as possible, to have them come out to the boards, to have them be part of this process so that they can take this back to their municipalities, and that their municipalities can start to have these conversations. Because as we have a final plan and we have to implement that plan, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take not just the individuals that are on the board, but also the individuals in the communities and the public as well. So I sincerely ask that the executive committee truly engage the governing board and their participation. And to the members of that board, I ask that you show up and make sure that you are participating in the process, because this has an enormous impact on all of us. I do want to say that it's no secret that the city of Miramar has a campaign going, led by our mayor, that we are opposing waste to energy because of the health issues associated with it. I won't say too much on that. I know our mayor is here today. He is an alternate on the board as well, and he will have a few words on that. But we do want to look at other alternatives. And as we look at other alternatives, we do have to keep in mind that every municipality is at a different level when it comes to recycling and so forth. Recycling is not new. Taking out yard waste is not new. None of the things that are presented today is really new. But in some cases, none of it is being done, and most of it is not being done. So there has to be, as part of this master plan, it has to be more details as to how municipalities will come together and to have one program for Broward County. Thank you.
Thank you. To the point on the governing board, it's an important point because the governing board has received in real time each of the task reports. Every participating municipality and staff has received every report in real time. We've asked for comments back from all governing board members. And to Yvette's point, when we had the last governing board meeting, we almost didn't have a quorum, to Josh's point. So I appreciate that. There are governing board members who attend regularly the monthly executive committee meetings. Even though they don't have to, they're not asked to, they sit, they participate. And so the reality is the work has been done by the executive committee. There is a plan moving forward to meet with the governing board as we come out of this public workshop process to present that. But the governing board has a role. It is possible to be active if you're a governing board member. Come to the executive committee meetings. Come join us in the monthly work we're doing, and you will be welcomed.
And Yvette, one thing that I think all of us, you're asking what the mechanism would be for us to do this. The one term that I don't think most municipal officials are familiar with is flow control. And that is the dynamic, and that is the mechanism that is all of us need to become familiar with, because that's how you actually determine where everything goes and where all your garbage is pledged. That is going to be, if this succeeds, the working mechanism of it. So to that extent, try to become aware of that. It is in the documents, but it's important to understand that mechanism.
Okay, to this side.
Thank you.
Before you go on, if I can just add to that, when I talk about engaging the governing board, I think it is important that you understand that I'm just not saying invite the governing board to the executive meeting. I'm specifically saying that the governing board needs to meet as a board, unless I don't understand how this is set up. But you have a board. The executive board has maybe 10 municipalities on it. The governing board represents the other 21 or 20 municipalities, 21 municipalities here in Broward County. We need to meet as a governing board and have the representation and the voice of everyone met. Not just say, come to our board meeting. That's my only point.
Yeah, but I need to address that because let's be clear. The governing board, this is the structure perhaps before you were involved. This is the structure. The executive committee has been tasked with the hard work of meeting sometimes twice a month, sometimes once a month. It is nearly impossible to get a quorum based on what we all agreed had to be met. Each of the governing board members selected their representatives on the executive committee. And we have committed that the governing board is going to meet in September. Once we get through these public workshops, when everybody comes back, we're going to work the summer, but there are some cities and the county that takes time off. Not Beam, he never takes time off. But we're meeting in September to have this introduced. I just have to push back on this because every task report has been delivered to staff and to every city in every governing board. To your point, if they don't want to engage, you're right, they should. They should read it. They should come. It's a part of it. But the decision of the governing board was not to meet any time other than when it was time for the budget or when we needed to get together. And we are going to do that. And I agree with you. We need more engagement.
And one other thing. Under the ILA, the agreement that everybody voted on and every commission voted on, the executive committee has certain responsibilities and the governing board has specific responsibilities. So they're different in what they're charged to do. And so I encourage you to look at the difference of what each one is asked to do.
But to your point, more need to be engaged.
Yeah,
We agree with that 100%.
And they're definitely invited to every meeting.
Ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Jackie Raley, Mayor of Coconut Creek. I want to say, first of all, thank you, chairs. Thank you for everyone that has worked on this document. I have a newfound respect for you. Thank you. It's an amazing document. I really want to say that we've learned from history, and I hope we learn from history. And I hope moving forward, we can get on the right track. I don't think that we should close any doors. I think any possibility moving forward is progress. So that is why I'm here, to just encourage that all doors remain open and you consider our options. I also want to say that as a municipality, Coconut Creek is exemplary in recycling and moving forward. I am going to toot our horn because the commission and the commission before I even joined has worked so hard, and our staff, to engage our residents in recycling and being aware of what is needed to reduce our waste factor. And I think any city, no matter how large or small, can engage their residents, because I have residents coming to me and have for the last several years. What has happened to our recycling system? They want to recycle. They need to recycle. They need to feel a part of the system. And I hope that through education and communication, we can get there. And I thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Mayor?
Good morning. I think it's still morning. To the chair, vice chair, all of my elected colleagues that's here present for this very important meeting. First, I'm Wayne Messa, Mayor of the City of Miramar. I thoroughly enjoyed the history and the timeline of how we got here. In fact, I remember calling the very first meeting when the Resource Recovery Board was about to expire. I invited elected officials in Broward County for a very important discussion. What are we going to do as a county for resource recovery once the Resource Recovery Board disbands? We don't have a plan. There's nothing coming from the county. There's no credible solution or options coming from municipalities. We have to start talking now. And I think it was about a couple of years before the expiration of the Resource Recovery Board. Because what I wanted to make clear to my colleagues was that there would not be a viable solution without the collective effort of the combining of our trash for a solution. We need the economy of scale and the mass to be able to make a viable proposition to the marketplace for a solution. And obviously from that meeting, the various names of the boards have now evolved to where we are today. I thank my Vice Mayor Yvette Colburn for the thoughtful comments as relates to some of the important factors. But right off the gate, there was something that was stated. We got to talk about the elephant in the room. I'll make a small amendment. There are several elephants. Not only about what is going to be the plan, because my concern is that we're going to leave here today without a specific plan, or at least knowledge of what we can go back to our community to say, how are we going to collectively address garbage moving forward? It's still an evolving process. We don't know the cost. We don't know the method. It hasn't been described. If I'm characterizing this or minimizing it, I do not mean it in a disrespectful way. I'm just addressing one of the elephants in the room. How much is it going to cost my city and my residents to be able to discard or recycle trash from their homes? I don't think that's going to be clear after we leave today.
To be clear, Mayor, that's not the purpose of today.
I understand.
We're not voting today. This is part of a series of workshops.
It is public.
Let me just finish, Mayor. It's a series of workshops that are introduced to the elected officials and staff, exclusively elected officials and staff today. We have 2 more public workshops, and then the governing board will be presented in September, the recommendations from the executive committee that will address the multiple elephants.
Understood. Understood. Again.
Parade of elephants, yes.
Understood. And again, this is not an attack on the leadership or the executive committee or the governing board. I'm just stating, as it relates to the public who wants to know, how do we move forward? And how we move forward, this is the foundation. This is the pillar. We have commissioned a master plan that has given recommendations. We don't have specifics. You'll get comments from us. You'll get comments from the public. And then there's going to have to be a decision that is made on the path forward. Second elephant in the room. We have to completely trust the data in this study. I understand some of the rationale in terms of some of the recommendations, but it comes across that the recommendations automatically factors in that we must have waste to energy. By virtue of stating that, of course we have to use our existing infrastructure, but it doesn't leave enough bandwidth for us to thoroughly explore other credible and viable solutions that will require the combined assets of our trash to make it viable. Because you can't feed a burning furnace as well as come with a viable alternative solution that would require the same resources that would go to that furnace to make that a more sustainable and viable economically and environmental option for Broward County. I don't think the plan presents that. Maybe it was a flaw in the basis of design and what we were asking our consultants to bring back to us. I don't know. I'm just stating that based off what is presented, it does not provide enough bandwidth or would require the consultants to go back to amend what they are presenting us to get in new data. And I may be wrong. I'm not the expert. I'm just saying how I'm interpreting what has been shared with me, with our staff, and information that has come from here. Now, waste to energy. There was, I think, an Appendix P. It basically states, it's all but saying that waste to energy is safe. It's all but saying that. So the question becomes, was this individually peer-reviewed? Okay, it did not cite where this information was coming from. I may be wrong. I don't recall seeing it. So we would request that, where is this information being cited from? Who presented the information? I don't think it's there, and we welcome to get that information. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It just is not included. So if the report, which we are basing our decision on, we're going to be asked to accept this master plan, and if the data is not validated, or if it's not independently reviewed, if it's being offered as a standard or to be accepted, a technology should be accepted based off this criteria, we should at least know where that information is coming from. And we welcome to get that information, because I'm not sure if it was presented in the release of the master plan. And if it was, I stand corrected. And finally, the city of Miramar over the last couple of years have been fighting like hell to keep what would be the America's largest incinerator from being built right on our border, within an eighth of a mile of our city. The fact of the matter is, if waste to energy is going to be a solution in Broward County, and that just may be a harsh reality we may have to accept. What I will say is that there are only 2 sites in Broward County that could feasibly hold or build or expand waste to energy technology. That is the current Willebrator site, or in our backyard in Southwest Broward, at the current Broward landfill that currently has the entitlements to build a waste to energy site, unless someone else was willing to accept it in a process, all right? I'm just stating it's probably the lowest hanging fruit as it relates to a location, okay? No one wants this in their backyard. That's why everyone is saying no. And for anyone who will say that waste to energy is okay, ask yourself the question. Because most of all, many of these individuals may live miles away from where this will be built. If the tables were turned, I think the chorus would be a little different. Again, I'm addressing the elephant in the room. And a new waste to energy facility, especially if the Broward landfill is being considered. Just as we've stated to Miami-Dade County, to build a waste to energy facility on the shores of the Everglades would be the most asinine proposition to contemplate, especially with the environmental and human health risk that that technology would cause so close to hundreds of thousands of residents in the Everglades, and over $1 billion of federal and state investment to ensure that our region has safe drinking water supply. So these are some of the realities that is very tough for us to say, and I'm just being as straightforward as possible. Some of my comments may be off base due to ignorance, due to lack of information. Again, it's not an assault on the wonderful work that each of you are providing, leading this county for us. But it is our job to apply the pressure, to ask the important questions, and to press the envelope to say, if we're going to go to our residents, we need to know that a technology that is viable is presented, that is cost effective for us all. It takes into consideration our environment. It takes into consideration how much it's going to cost us so that we can come up with a viable solution. So I may be on an island, our city may be on an island, some other city of our allies may be on an island, but I just throw that out there for us to have meaningful dialogue. We need to know, let's put a proposition out there, but if we're saying that waste to energy must be a solution, it all but eliminates other alternatives that with the same resources being dedicated to it could possibly be a viable option for Broward County that is much more sustainable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's be really clear, and let's say this again, because we all have a responsibility to our communities. There is no part of this plan that says waste to energy at BIC or in Southwest Ranches. Stop. It's over. It's not in there. No one's suggesting it. They told you there's no new waste to energy plant being discussed. Second, we looked at viable technologies. Travis presented. We are not an incubator to experiment and lose tens of millions of dollars on something that doesn't work. We task them with finding available and viable technology that are proven in the United States. What I will not be part of, which my city was in the past, where they invested in a non-viable technology involving our waste, and we lost a lot of money. I know it. Our city lived it. Our task to them was find viable technologies that are proven that we can invest, because we know we have the commodity stream. and you've heard of it. It's in the task papers. It's in the work that's been done behind the draft master plan. We have looked at that bandwidth. What exists and what's available is part of this plan. The report did validate data. You need to look beyond the master plan, and this is my frustration. The task papers have gone to staff. They have gone to the cities. They've been peddled out as they got done. We didn't wait to drop 10,000 pages on our cities and say this is what we're going to decide. Every task paper addressed these issues and was sent out. I encourage you, this is just the first step for us. I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, go read it. Send us the comments like we're hearing today. We don't have to wait for a public workshop for this. We all know how to get a hold of each other. Work through the league, work through the SWA. I invite those and we invite those. So with respect to ultimately the data, we've done composition, we've done generation studies, we've examined it, we've sent them back to look for more data. It's there. The composition and generation studies exist, and we know it's there. There's probably not been as much work ever done, even in the organization of the Resource and Recovery Board or what Palm Beach County did to make a decision, because they weren't terrified like we are. They weren't in a crisis. We needed to understand how bad this is. So I invite you to look at the task work. The executive committee, one second. The executive committee, to their credit, has had to digest this for 18 months in very rapid, sometimes, efforts where the week before a meeting, we're getting a very detailed report and we're working on comments. So I invite you, it's there, and this is the first step on that, okay? Jimmy, Bean?
Yeah, just real quick, on those, on the articles, they are all cited. I am a librarian. I actually went and looked up every single one of them, because I wanted to make sure where they were from. These were peer-reviewed journals from throughout the world, from Japan, from Europe, from Canada, from the UK. All of those were scientifically looked at. That was a exhaustive study on waste energy from all of those. So I recommend all of you to go look at those studies. Those are of the newest waste energy plants. And the one thing I do want to mention on this is from the county perspective, we've had our eyes on what's going on in Miami. They are in a mess, and I don't want to be in that mess. I do not want to be at wit's end trying to figure out where 5 million tons of garbage goes. And when their plant went down, they had no alternative, none. And we have a 35-year-old plant. Now I will say it's in pretty good shape, given it's 35-year-old plant. I don't know, like in dog years, what a plan is on that. But it would make sense to have a backup there. Now, and it probably makes sense if it was going to go right where the other one is, because it's infrastructure. Mayor Messam, there are 3 sites that are actually allowed in the county. One is where it is. One is the Broward landfill. It would have to go through all kind of permitting. And the other is where the other one was. So those are where the 3 are. Just so you know.
Well, we'd have to buy it back.
You'd have to buy it back.
Or we came together and we said, don't do it. Wait. Hang on. I want to make clear on this. Hang on one second. I'll turn it to you, Mayor. Give me a second. We understood at that time that there were limited sites and there was no appetite for that location in Southwest Broward. And the one on site that already was permitted for electrical generation was at Monarch Hill. And the Solid Waste Authority Executive Committee opposed the rezoning of that. We opposed the increase of Monarch Hill. And then when it came time to vote on it, to then take a stand, we asked the county to wait for this very discussion. So we have considered that, not a new site, but what existed. Unfortunately, the only way to use that current site would now be for us to buy it back and get it automatically rezoned.
Yeah, just briefly, I fear that my comments were received incorrectly. I clearly stated that if the report as presented included, we must include existing infrastructure. That naturally includes the current waste-to-energy facility or the expansion of incineration. There's, for the most part, 2 viable sites that would be the lowest hanging fruit for either expansion at the Wheelabrator site or the Broward landfill. I did not say that this plan says to build it there, but it has the zoning, it has the space, it has the entitlement, and if the decision by the executive board, the governing board, the municipality state to build it there, it could be built. And I was simply stating that in Appendix P that references waste-to-energy facilities and talks about its safety, when there's so much data that shows the toxic implications of burning trash and that PFAS and all of these issues regarding the landfill ash that would result, it's a challenge. And I state that if we accept this master plan and the master plan says that WTE is safe, there's nothing to worry about, and we're asking for that specific peer-reviewed information, we want to see it. We didn't question.
It's there. It's there. It's listed. It's cited.
All right, we'll follow up. We'll follow up, not to debate, but that's just simply my point, and I just don't want it to be misunderstood or misinterpreted, that these are important times, these are grave decisions we have to make, and if we're going to accept a plan, that the data has to be supported. Thank you.
And I want to be clear. I'm not in this discussion, and whether it seems a little animated, I'm not pro WTE. I'm just simply saying I want to be clear in what has been done so that you can make these decisions, right? This is a decision we have to make collectively and where, and the points raised are well taken, and extra work went in to do the citations, to go through and do the health. It was requested by the executive committee to go back and get more information on health, and to then provide every citation possible on current and past. Sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to thank Mayor Furr and Mayor Ryan for hosting and presiding today. My name is Russell Muniz. I'm the town administrator for the town of Southwest Ranches. I'm proud to say that 80% of my council is here today represented, and 100% of our administration, so I'm proud of that. Just a couple things. I wanted to point out that the master plan, I thought you guys did a phenomenal job with it. It was very in-depth, very thorough. I did want to kind of just point to 2 things to see if there had been thought to it, or to see if it can be included for future planning. One is further resource mining, if you will, of the landfills, the current landfills, much like you kind of mine for ore, looking through the current landfills for materials that can be processed into the future. So, using trommels rather, to go through and kind of resource that material and see if there's ways to kind of extract any kind of materials that would ordinarily be recovered, to see if that's something that could be done into the future. I don't know if that's being done anywhere else in the country, but just something that with emerging technologies, it might be something that might be possible into the future. The other thing is legislative advocacy at the state level. Present company excluded. It seems like Tallahassee is hell-bent on eroding home rule in the state of Florida. And, they come up with all of these mandates that are unfunded. Well, if they want to do something like that, why not do something like mandate that all cities recycle throughout the state? It would include increase recycling rates, not just in Broward County, but everywhere. Make that an unfunded mandate if you want, but let's do something like that. So just things like that, legislative advocacy at the state level, I'd like to see something like that included in the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Just one comment. There is, the legislature did just pass, I don't think it's been signed, Robin, you could probably know better than I do, that is requiring much of, for us to have a comprehensive waste system. So it's, maybe you can speak to that.
Well, a second, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so for those of you, we've gone past noon. We're going to keep going. Just make sure, unlike Sunrise where we don't charge for parking, make sure you put your promo code in there so you can continue to have your parking paid for.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. Chair and Vice Chair, I want to thank you for your leadership And I want to also thank my fellow colleagues on the executive board for being in the trenches. My name is Commissioner Melissa P. Dunn from the city of Lauderdale. And I sit also on the Education and Outreach Subcouncil for the Solid Waste Authority. And we need your help. So this is a call to action, something that you can do to help move this agenda forward. And excuse me, I have the flu here. But call to action. We have 2 public meetings coming up. One on Monday, June 16th at 6:30 p.m. at Treetop Park, and the other one on June 17th at 6:30 p.m. at the Fort Lauderdale Downtown Center. And the communication team has created toolkits that they have circulated to city staff and to also the governing board members and the executive board members. And so we're asking you if you could please push it out through your city's communication channels. We want as many of our residents to participate as possible. And I must say this is even equally important for those communities that are considered under-resourced, those 6 zip codes in Broward County that we all know who they are. It's important for everyone to show up at those conversations, right? We need to make sure that we see economic and gender and also ethnic diversity in the room. So I'm asking you to push out that communications toolkit that was sent to staff. And if you go to browardswa.org, that's a website. It has copies of all of the white papers. And then, of course, we also share it on our Facebook page. So just search Broward Waste on Facebook or go to Solid Waste Authority BC on Instagram. We need your help in order to get comprehensive feedback from the community. So thank you in advance for your support.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Commissioner Dunn for what she's done, because in addition, for our youth, there's an ambassador program. You can get a toolkit to designate young people to push forward the principles on this thing called TikTok or whatever the heck that is, and other social media. So really, we're really trying to build an infrastructure around education already, and please go look at it and start harnessing what's already there. Mayor.
Thank you. Steve Rycruz, Mayor of the town of Southwest Ranches and a member of the Executive Committee of the SWA. Appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments here. I really want to focus on 2 things. I think if there's one thing that we can all agree about that we've heard today is that we've got to stick together. We've got to have a plan that we can all stick together. If we start splintering apart and start doing our own thing, we're doomed to fail before we even get started here. And I say that because it's the reality, it's the truth. And another element that I think is just as true, that I think the executive board, the governing board also needs to keep in mind, as we've heard very, very clearly this morning, is that if there is one issue that will split us apart and doom us to failure, it's the inclusion of a waste to energy element. It'll split us apart. It will literally doom us to failure if we include that. And we may not want to hear that. I understand we may not want to hear that, but that is very obvious from what we have discussed this morning. And so I think we all need to take those 2 realities into consideration, because that is what is in fact going to happen. The second thing I wanted to touch on is the journey itself. This is a journey. This is not a document. This is not a plan that's going to be done in August. We get to, brush our hands and call it a day, and now we just need to execute on it. Because the world keeps changing. The technology keeps changing. Our growth patterns change. The municipalities, what can be offered changes. What our residents want to see and the priorities change. So this plan is going to have to be a living document, and I know that we're committed to it being a living document. And so I bring that up because if you look back at any industry 40 years ago and the technology they had and the things they could do, versus where they are today is transformational. If you go back 2 or 3 years, you know, AI has taken over so many different industries. That really wasn't available 2, 3 years ago. And so we need to be looking at, number one, recognizing that this is a living document. This is a journey. We are taking the first steps in a very long journey. And we need to be very, very, very careful about committing literally $1 billion+ to a specific technology when there's a whole nother set of technologies that's coming out that's on the cusp. And I agree with you, Mayor Ryan, we don't want to be spending money on technology that's not proven. That's throwing away, that's not being good stewards of the money that has been entrusted to us, and it's going to ruin the faith that the residents have in us. But on the other hand, we need to keep our options open. It's critical that we keep our options open, because I guarantee you that 5 years from now, there's going to be some tremendous changes in the options that are available to us. And if we commit to a huge option one that's $1 billion+, we won't potentially have the option to take advantage of some of those others that are coming out. So I just think we should be cautious, recognize that this is going to be an ongoing journey, and more than anything else, we've got to find solutions that we can all rally behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could, there's one elected official that hadn't had a chance to speak yet, and then Representative Bartleman, you can close the show.
Thank you. Hi there. My name is Mary Molina McPhee. I am a Weston City Commissioner. As of 1.5 years ago, after COVID, I am now a severe asthmatic. Been in the hospital at least 6 times in the last year. More days than not, I have no voice. Many days, that's because I don't have enough oxygen to push sound out. Today, I do have a voice, so I'm sharing it with our constituents, over 100,000 of us that have either upper respiratory issues or breathing issues, such as mine. An incinerator / waste to energy and its ash is a shortcut with long-term consequences, releasing toxins like lead, dioxins, and fine particulates into the air we breathe. These pollutants directly threaten our health, especially for children, seniors, and those with conditions like mine. I will not support anything that puts our residents' health or property values at risk, and I ask the same of each of you. Our residents, environment, and community deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Representative Bartleman.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to say the reason I started out with that discussion about the initial bill was because that bill was in place, and as a county, we went another way. And 3 counties did. And by the way, Charlotte County did it without the credits from a waste to energy facility, number 1. 2, I think there's like a trust issue with the waste to energy. I think there's a trust issue. I'm just going to, the elephant in the room. 1, there's a trust issue with the report. So I sent the report to different people because my concern is the Everglades. And there is a proposal to put 2, there's 1 incinerator definitely a stone's throw away from the C9 basin, which is millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent in Everglades restoration, which will have huge impacts, and the Everglades Trust has already spoken about that. Everybody's been talking about what that's going to do to the Everglades. The second one is the one that's out west that is also adjacent to the Everglades. And so those are my issues in terms of the waste to energy. I think if it was taken off the table, if it was modified, I think everyone in this room would feel better because it is still there. And I have talked to different people. And honestly, if the county commission wants to, there's no enforcement for them to have to take this report. They can go ahead and build a waste to energy, which is a concern for everyone in this room. What I did not hear about is tax incentives and things the county can do to encourage the recycling. So the bill that we're speaking of is enrolled. It has not gone to the governor's desk yet to be signed, but you can anticipate that it's going to be signed because the other study was signed into law. And like I said, they did monitor the counties that were working towards that. But I would like you to put something in terms of tax incentives in that package, some sort of guardrails. In terms of Tallahassee, I file just about every year the repealer bill for the plastics exemptions. So don't think Tallahassee isn't listening. It's just getting it heard, number one. And number two, there was a super plastic preemption that was added to the incinerator bill carried by Representative Meg Weinberger. And I filed an amendment, and she actually killed her own bill to get that out, to make sure that we weren't preempting cities and municipalities and counties any further, and it would have created great harm to all of the coastlines and water areas in Florida. So I think there is a movement. It is changing. I will continue to file that bill. And I'm also going to offer, because I'm up here as a naysayer and critiquing and Monday morning quarterbacking what happened in 2012, that if you need me to carry a local bill, I would carry a local bill for you to do something, because something has to be done. I raised my children here. I'm anticipating raising my grandchildren here. I anticipate continuing to save the Everglades and our groundwater and our freshwater aquifer. So we have to do something. And you can ask, I go to the zero waste meetings, and the first meeting we had, I said, okay, you guys don't want an incinerator. You better come up with another plan, because we have to do something with the garbage. And that's the real conversation that has to be had. If you don't want an incinerator, you have to have skin in the game and do something with your garbage. I think people want to do it. I'm here to work with you. What you need me to do, I'm here. Talk to me about a local bill. The process is going to start very soon, but we need to have guardrails, and you cannot acknowledge the distrust in the room in terms of waste to energy, because you heard it today, that people who love waste to energy. So please, I'm here to work with you, and thank you for all your work in hosting this meeting.
Thank you very much. So I don't want to belabor the point, but what Representative Bartman just said about waste energy, if you don't want it, if you don't think it should be in Broward County, you better take a lot more action. This is not the place to do it. It is all of the other structures. I am tired of the hand-wringing over it, and then nothing's done. Get behind C&D and bulk and veg ordinance. Get behind mandates. Be ready, as was said, for enhancements to incentives and consequences for noncompliance, for contamination. Deal with landfilling at every level. Figure out what we're doing at our shelves. You know, these reusable bags, I have so many in my trunk because I buy them every time. I was an altar boy. A Catholic guilt takes over, and I buy these things because I feel guilty. Stick with that. Keep doing. Do what we can do in the cities. But don't just come here and say WT's killing us and then do nothing, because that leaves us no options. I want to thank everybody, and I'll turn it over to the chair for some final comments. But I want to, co-chair, I want you to take away from this, there are things we can start doing now. We don't have to wait for the master plan. There's work still yet to be done. We have our communities outreach to still do. The work of the executive committee is continuing. We have our upcoming meetings, and we're going to end up presenting. Hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll have something in hand to the governing board, but it is the start, and we can start today. Thank you.
Just a real quick thank you to everybody on all this work. It's been a ton of work over a year or so. We're thankful for it. I do suggest some people, if you get a chance, look at the highest recycling rates in the world. Look at the cities and the countries that do it, and look at how they manage to get there and what they have to do. Very seldom do you find recycling rates over 60%. In fact, the highest is Germany at 65. Sweden, second, 51%. What do they do with the rest of their stuff? They have to figure out. Usually they do waste energy. So you have to figure out, those are the highest recycling rates in the world, where they do tin bins and you know, they do everything right and all the regulatory in the world. So you have to look at what has been successful in the most regulated areas in the world. And we're having to deal with that. And you know, what the chair just said is do something about it, we can do it. So thank you all for being here today. Again, thank you all for the presentation.